Back, back. Might have to. Yeah, it's a lot better. How's everyone doing? I feel like we're starting to talk about Peter Doe a bit too much. I promise after this stream, we'll move to other brands and different designers. Um, but I did realize I hadn't talked about Peter Doe for like years when I made that initial video. So it's good to get the Peter Doe discussions back. Blanks, how you doing? Fashion Week is so hectic. I swear, I don't know how people like do it every season, like going to every show every season. My God, I've barely been able to keep up with like half of what's been going on. Oh, I'm doing well, Blanks. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Azar, how are you doing? Make sure I've got all my assets for today's stream locked and loaded. Oh, that was a bit weird. Okay, we'll just give it like a few minutes and then we'll get straight into what we need to discuss today. Because we're talking about Peter Doe again, but we're really talking about Peter Doe's runway show, comparing that to Helmut Lang, and then of course talking about the Banana Republic collaboration. Shout out to Copenhagen. Snarky Scandi. I love that name. That's a really good name. Not gonna lie. Snarky Scandi. I like that. Shout out to Zurich. Okay, so it's kind of like 3 minutes in, close to, so let's get straight into it. So today we're talking about Peter Doe Spring Summer 2024. We're talking about Peter Doe's collaboration with Banana Republic, and we're just going to discuss and contrast this collection in comparison to obviously what Peter Doe did at Helmut Lang, and if it's better, if it isn't better, and so on. And there's not even really much background to give because I feel like at this point everyone knows about Peter Doe on this channel. Everyone knows kind of what he does. And the show notes of this collection were quite interesting because I was reading a lot of interviews that Peter Doe gave around this collection. He was talking about how he wants to be taken more seriously and he's designing in a very serious way. And so it made so much sense when literally you read the show notes and it literally says, this season, we want our work to speak for itself. It's also a good move. And I think it also makes a lot of sense because when you think about Peter Doe's work is about tailoring skill and it's about aesthetic and it's about cut. So that kind of brand really isn't the brand that should be like over explaining inspiration points every season the way that say a JW Anderson would, because it's just like a crazy art project type vibe. Um, so it's really interesting that he's gone the sort of low key route with the collection in a way. But what do you guys genuinely think of the Spring Summer 24 collection before we start watching it, if you guys managed to see it? Off topic, but did you like yesterday's ARM collection? It was okay. I did a Instagram live stream about it. It wasn't like spectacular, but once again, it's another one of those debut collections. You can only really judge them so well, to be honest. So yeah, it just is what it is. I love also how there's sort of like a continuation of Peter Doe's Helmut Lang in this collection here, because a lot of the styling cues, the Helmut Lang styling cues, Peter Doe has used it for his own brand. So even like tucking in things into the trousers, a lot of the silhouettes as a carryover. Of course, the vest and the layering of the vest is something that Helmut Lang did, but it's also something that Peter Doe has done almost every season. And I like how that aspect of the collection is exaggerated. There are a lot of it seems like there are a lot of considerations of the fact that Peter Doe is now creative director of Helmut Lang and sort of bringing a lot of those ideas forward into this collection. This collection is also Peter Doe's first runway show in Paris. Peter Doe normally shows in New York, but because Helmut Lang was in New York to sort of break things up, that's why this collection is in Paris. And here, once again, we see like the Helmut Lang styling cues. It's really interesting because I think generally this collection, and you guys will see it progressively, this collection was a lot better than the Helmut Lang collection. Even these blazers with sort of the silk inner lining that you would see inside of a jacket as kind of like the attachment piece between different parts of the blazer is such an interesting take and design cue. It just reminds me of Alexander McQueen when Alexander McQueen was at Givenchy. Alexander McQueen would literally save his best ideas for his own brand and give Givenchy like a 60%. And the thing is, McQueen's Givenchy collections were still spectacular because it's McQueen, but you could clearly tell that McQueen wasn't putting 100% into the Givenchy collections. It was really saving the best for his own brand. And I think you're kind of getting that same sense with Peter Doe. This shirt here, this look actually, is one of the Banana Republic collaboration looks. And also, the interesting thing about Peter Doe and just working with Banana Republic actually is Banana Republic is literally what is saving Gap Incorporated. Because if you guys don't know, like Gap Incorporated owns Banana Republic. And Banana Republic is actually one of the best performing brands within their stable. And it clearly shows that clearly they're doing very interesting things and they're investing in different ways to kind of continue that success. This collaboration with Peter Doe being one of them. So it's just interesting because the kind of pieces that he gave to the Banana Republic collab, they aren't basic. And it makes me wonder, would a Banana Republic customer buy this stuff? Probably not. It's probably Peter Doe customers that can't afford the main line, because Peter Doe mainline prices have just been flying up over time. I think those are the kind of people that are going to buy the Banana Republic collaboration. So the collection is superior to the Helmut Lang. Yeah, I would 100% agree. I would 100% agree. I just like this idea of like the silk inner lining of a jacket being used as an outer piece of the jacket. So it's just an interesting design cue. A lot of sheer fabrics in this collection is making me worried. I'm like the monetization. I don't want to get demonetized by YouTube. That's the one thing about reacting to runway shows and breaking down runway shows. I'm always like, every time I see some form of nudity, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get demonetized. So many people think Banana Republic is high fashion, so people buy it because it is advertised as cheap luxury. Really? People think Banana Republic is high fashion. I mean, what high fashion is like, obviously, it's not a singular thing, but I didn't know that people thought that way. Also, like, this is an interesting touch to their runway video versus most brands where it's literally just a video of models on the runway. You're kind of getting some scenes of behind the stage being mixed with what's going on the runway. I like that. This is also kind of like what Peter Doe does, kind of like the vest with the cutout bits here. Obviously, here it's completely exaggerated to the point where you can go sleeveless. But that is also an idea that he had in the Helmut Lang collection. That is something that he's done. So he's further developed it here. That's interesting. The pink belts on the Helmut Lang collection look quite cheap in my opinion, and the color only made them stand out. So I didn't like that at all personally. Yeah, I think also this look here is another one of the Banana Republic collabs. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Peter Doe trying to be more safe and commercial with the Lang collection compared to his own stuff. Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, like with Helmut Lang, the task is to reintroduce new consumers and old consumers to Helmut Lang, the brand, the name. Whereas at Peter Doe is designing for a customer base that expects a certain look. They kind of will accept whatever Peter Doe does. So his brand does lend the ability to be a bit more creative and be a bit more experimental for sure. But I think you could still like anything that Peter Doe designs for his own brand, all could be shifted to Helmut Lang because the aesthetic is so like not similar, but it's minimalism at the end of the day. It's like that's the idea of it. That's the underlying philosophy. So it would work both ways. It would work at Helmut Lang, it would work at Peter Doe's brand, which is why it then ends up coming across like Peter Doe saved the best ideas for his own brand. Gap, Banana Republic, and Old Navy are owned by the same company. Banana Republic is just poorly made and for price shit. Yeah, I don't really know. Like, we don't really have like Banana Republics just all over the place in the UK. So I just don't really have much experience with it. Like, as far as fast fashion goes, in the UK, we have like The Weekend, we have H&M, of course, Zara, those kind of shops. Like even Gap is like we have Gap, but Gap is not really like people don't really shop at the Gap here. It's not like the US. Like the US, the Gap is like a thing. Anything that can be done on Helmut Lang is an improvement. Yeah, because it just works both ways. Like the aesthetics work both ways. Here we have another one of Peter Doe playing with the sort of vest cutout idea. I like how they're styling it because obviously how like when you see people actually wearing it, it's literally just like a vest or a long sleeve and there's a cutout here, but they're wearing the clothes off sleeves. I don't know if that's just to make it look more interesting on the runway, but those pieces, Peter Doe does an example of those kind of things almost every season. I also like those long line shirts with the exaggerated thick cuffs that I know are part of the Banana Republic collaboration as well. I think those are really interesting. They're really interesting, sorry. And Pizza Dough by Pizza Dough was filmed properly. The looks can actually be seen. I'm like Helmut Lang. Yeah, I guess that's another thing. Because the way things were filmed in the Helmut Lang runway show were really annoying. I can't lie. That whole I get that they wanted you to see the Ocean Vuong text, but I think once you've seen it once, it's okay, and then you just want to see the clothes. But it kept panning to like up top, and all you see is like the model's head. You barely saw any of the clothes. It was like weird angles. This is the most perfect video, only because most runway videos you only get to see the front of the garments because it's just the front on camera angle. Whereas the models are turning around and we get this like side angle where the models literally turn around. So you can actually see every single aspect of the garments. That is actually something that you don't get from most brands, even the biggest brands. You only see the front. And then it'll be my friends who went to the runway show who tell me, oh, you should have seen like the back details. Like it's normally brands like Bottega that have interesting back details that no one sees until like you actually see the garments or until they're on the website, of course. Models are also walking quite slowly, which I would enjoy if I was at the runway show, because once again, I'm just trying to see as much as the as much of the clothing as I can. This reminds me of the row. There's nothing wrong with it, but I appreciate the simple or the focus of the silhouette. Yeah, I agree. I mean, all those brands are kind of adjacent to each other, like the row, Peter Doe, Jill Sander. Not saying they're the same because they're not, but you could quite easily just interchange them and achieve a close to similar aesthetic. But no, I think this was a really good collection. It was really solid. I like the ideas. There's a lot of like similar ideas across the collection. Like the long line shirts, the cutouts, the vest, the layering. I what I also love is even Peter Doe did shorts in this collection. Everyone has been doing those silly ass, overly short shorts, and Peter Doe has these really beautiful long shorts that look like they would actually properly work with a suit and look nice. Like a lot of the super short shorts, if you were to wear them with the tailoring looks that a lot of brands are putting them on the runway, you just look really silly. Like it just gives like going to the club in Berlin vibes. Whereas Peter Doe's clothing is way more mature. It like when you even look at the way the shorts were styled, it's like, yeah, you could actually wear these anywhere. I'd really like to see the details of the clothing in person. Yeah, same. I want to know because that kind of fabric that Peter Doe used, that he's tucking into the garments of the that's attached to the blazers. That is quite. It looks. I don't know if that's true, but it does look like the inner lining, like the same fabric that you would use as an inner lining of a coat. And the thing about that is, how rigid is it, and how structured is it? Like, would it rip easily? Like, if you're walking and that part of the jacket gets caught on something, would it rip? So that's what I would really like to feel those parts of the jacket just to see how rigid it is and to see, I don't know, if it would just like actually last long. Did someone say I find him what you find Peter Doe pretty boring? I think it's just a specific look. It's very classic, it's very minimal. Like I said, it like the Helmut Lang, the Celine Phoebe Philo type thing going on. So there's not much to talk about the clothes in terms of inspiration points and stuff like that. It really is just about the tailoring. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's always going to be a market for beautifully made clothing. Now, do I think Peter Doe is insanely overpriced? Yes. And I find it weird that the prices seem to just constantly be rising. I don't know why that is. Um, but the clothing, I'm definitely a proponent of Peter Doe. Like I would wear it if I could fit into it. Um, a lot of the Peter Doe stuff is just like too small for me, but I do like it on an aesthetic level. I think it's cool. But that it's just the whole thing. It's like Jill Sander, like Celine, like Phoebe Philo Celine, obviously not now. Helmut Lang. Who else does that? There's so many even new brands. Obviously the Row, but there's so many new brands that kind of fill that space. Even like Pro Enza Schula is kind of going in that direction as well. Fashion in general is overpriced. Yeah. Yesterday I was talking about the insane Burberry prices. The Burberry prices just do not make any sense whatsoever. It's just a mad sight to behold. I want to go on the Banana Republic Instagram page just to see what they've posted about this Peter Doe show, to see what pieces. Okay, I think on their IG they show the pieces. So even that vest is part of the club. That's interesting. That's very out there for Banana Republic. This like shoulder cutout, which Peter Doe always does with the cutouts, with the turtleneck, that would work. I could see the crossover there. This vest, layered vest, is very interesting. I'd love to see how that sells. Have I seen the Miri prices? No, I haven't. I haven't. Like you said, achieve the same look by going to a tailor and know that it's just made for you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was saying this in my Instagram live stream the other day. So 2 weeks ago, I went to Savile Row and I was just walking into different tailoring shops just to figure out how much a suit on Savile Row actually costs. Like, I was so curious. I've always wanted to know for years. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to Savile Row and find out for myself. And I went into Jeeves and Hawkes, and in Jeeves and Hawkes, there are suits that literally cost like £80,000 depending on, because there are some of these like rare fabrics that they use. But there are also some suits, depending on if you use just like their basic cotton fabrics, that you can get on Savile Row for maybe closer to like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pounds on the lower end. And I started to think, why would anyone, considering how expensive some of these luxury brands are, like Burberry trench coats cost £3,000. You could literally go to Savile freaking Row, and get a custom. If you have your own fabric, you could get a custom trench coat made for the same price as an off the rack trench coat from some of these brands. And it just begs the question, like, why would you buy these off the rack garments when you could literally just get them custom if you're that rich that you can afford that in the first place? I don't get it. So the only explanation for it is you want to wear the brand name, which is like sad, because that just means you're like a brand whore. Like, you're not doing it for the style because you want something to like actually fit really well. You're doing it because you just want to wear a certain brand. That's like quite sad. Going through the Banana Republic looks, very interesting. I think as far as Banana Republic goes, there's a lot to play with here in terms of the looks. I really like this like long line shirt, and I love how they've styled it. I wonder if the buttons actually end here, so you're actually forced to wear it this way, or if there are buttons all the way down and they've just styled it this way for the runway. That's something I want to see on the website when it comes out. Love the shape of this. Like, I love how the waist is cinched in. It gives me like Mugler vibes in a way. Love the shape of the tailoring. Love it. Love the wide trousers. The wide trousers, they remind me of those Bottega trousers from a few seasons ago. I'm trying to remember the season where the trousers had this kind of like cocoon shape, like the C-shape thing. So no, I think as far as Banana Republic goes, this stuff is really interesting, shape-wise. What do you guys think? Consumerism has taken over. I just enrolled in the Estonian Academy of Arts to study fashion, but it's such a small country and people don't really care about fashion here. Should I move to a more fashion keen country? If you can, obviously, I don't know what your financial situation is, but if you can, my best advice would be just move, because that's where the opportunities are. Like, sometimes you have to move where the opportunities are if you're not born where they are. Um, in certain industries, like people move to, like, for example, I have loads of friends that are professional basketball players, and they certainly didn't stay in the UK because the UK is not where the opportunities are for basketball. So same thing can be applied to fashion. Depending on what industry you're in, there will be certain locations that are more advantageous to be in. So if you can, if you have the means to, and like the whole immigration crap and all of that, if you can sort that out, then yeah, definitely. I feel like most consumers don't know that though. What do you mean most consumers don't? Do you mean when I was talking about the fact that you can get custom stuff for less? Because it's inconvenient. So the thing is, like, it's not inconvenient to go to Savile Row, you know. Well, if you're close to London, I guess. Like, you just walk in, if you have the money, you walk in. they give you like this list of like different fabrics and different styles. You pick one, they take your measurements, and then they make like a test sort of jacket for you, and then you come back into the store, and then they make more adjustments, and then based on that they make the final piece, and then you come back whenever you can. But like there's no timeline, so you can come back whenever it's convenient for you. It's not like they're forcing you, like you have to come back in a week's time. And it's like a really nice experience. You go in, you get refreshments. Like there's nothing inconvenient about going to Savile Row. Because a lot of these people that buy this like really expensive stuff, they don't really shop online anyway. They still go into the store to buy it. Because that's why like people have personal shoppers and stuff in stores like Selfridges. Will you do a general review of Fashion Week? It's very interesting to listen to your opinion on trends and aesthetics. Yeah, I have a plan to do some more like Fashion Week recaps like I used to in the past. I just wanted to focus on a few specific designers. Yeah, obviously it doesn't need to be Savile Row. I was just being like, I was just trying to make a point at the fact that because Savile Row is like super expensive, it's like the mecca of tailoring in the world. And just the fact that you can get things cheaper that are custom made on Savile Row versus off the rack pieces from some of these quote unquote luxury brands. And on Savile Row, you know for a fact you're getting the highest quality possible because you literally feel the fabrics. Like you're there. You get to like feel the fabrics and see if you like it or not. So I was obviously exaggerating, but you could literally just go to like a tailor that lives close to you and buy a fabric and get them to make a custom trench coat for you. And it would cost so much less. And the quality would be way better because you're picking the fabrics. So I guess the quality is as good as obviously construction, but also as good as the fabric you pick. So yeah, it's getting to the point where I just don't understand why you would buy any of these brands unless they're designing something really unique. Like obviously I buy Rick Owens because apart from the fact it fits me and I like the aesthetic and I want to support the brand, I'm not going to take like a fabric to a tailor and ask them to design those Rick Owens jackets with the crazy shoulders. They're just going to look at me funny, like, what the hell is this? Like, why do you expect me to be able to design this? Um, but yeah, when it comes to like these really basic ass pieces, I really do start to scratch my head. You have to know what style looks best on you and which fabrics are the best. Most people don't know this. I guess so. Do you think the high street will become extinct? Maybe not extinct, but I think that it'll become less of a thing. I think a lot of high streets aren't getting the foot traffic that they once did because of online shopping and the internet, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I think sooner or later, the high street will just like start to dwindle more and more. But I still think there'll be some sort of esteem in being able to go into a store and try things on and interact with the garments. Like me personally, for example, when it comes to fragrances, I hate the fact that there aren't more specialty fragrance places in the world in general. So a lot of fragrances I have to like blind buy it, and then sometimes I don't even like the smell, and like it's really hard to return fragrances, especially ones that you've already sprayed. So yeah. What city do you think is going the hardest this season? I think London had a really standout fashion week. Of course, everyone's probably going to say Paris or Milan because those are where the big brands are. But I genuinely think London had a really good season this season. Like I saw some really interesting stuff. What's the most you've seen slash heard of someone spend on clothes in one go? Um, I've been in a luxury store and I've seen someone spend 15,000 on clothes at once. But that's like the most I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've seen someone spend more than that like at once. But this was like in Selfridges, and there's a lot to buy in Selfridges, not just clothes and stuff. But like I was in line behind someone, and his total came to 15,000. He just like paid it. I was like, damn. Like, geez. Mike's black girlfriend. I love that name. I feel like most consumers don't know about quality though. Yeah, I guess that's the issue. I try. I mean, hopefully with these live streams, I'm low key educating people with time. I'm hoping that from time to time, people that have a slight interest in fashion but not that interested, they kind of find my lives and find my videos. Because yeah, I just think that consumers need to be more educated. I just think that consumers are literally being scammed at this point. Also, shopping vintage will reveal that clothing was made a lot better. Yeah, I mean, geez, I have one of my friends. He studies menswear design at CSM. He's in his final year, I think. So he is a collector of military garments. So he has a collection of military garments from like the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. He also has like footwear from the 50s. And the fact that footwear from the 50s is holding up nicely till today, stuff that is sold by luxury brands today is not going to last 60 years. It's just not going to happen. I'm not sure whether the general consumer of high fashion cares as much about a custom tailored suit and would rather opt for a $3,000 coat that others can recognize. Interesting. I guess we kind of end up talking about this every single time I come on live. But I think my issue with that mentality is that why do people feel a need to buy things just so that other people can recognize it? Like that is not really, to me at least, what fashion is about. Like fashion to me is about self-expression and dressing in a way that you do because you want to express yourselves through the way you dress. And so going out of your way to wear things just so it can be a signifier to other people, to me, like beats the point of that. I thought the recent MM6 show was a better modern take for Helmut Lang, but he really can't win with the first show for a brand. Yeah, I agree. I purchased from Celine. The craftsmanship is unmatched in my opinion, but you're right about the price point. We can do all the mental gymnastics we want, but brands will price as high as they can get away with. Yeah, exactly. Because I know, like, people try to argue with me about these prices, and it's so funny because I've literally worked at some of these luxury brands that people defend, and I've seen how much it costs to make, and I know how good the fabrics are, and I know some of these brands, not mentioning names, I know how some of them have like cut corners to save costs and like improve profits. So like when I say these things, I say it from the perspective of someone that has worked within some of these brands and know these things to be true through experience of working in the industry. It's not like I'm just like observing something from a distance. So brands are just they're hiking prices because they can get away with it. Because let's talk about Burberry, for example. Burberry, they overnight almost quadrupled their prices. Like you cannot tell me that overnight things became 4 times more expensive. Daniel Lee just decided on a whim, I'm just gonna make beanies at Burberry now £3,000. That is not. There's no like financial reason for doing that other than these brands. Once again, they're very sophisticated. They have really amazing marketing teams. They have a massive business team that works overtime, and so they do their like they do their research. Like they know their consumer base to the letter, and so when they hike prices, they're not doing it because they just want to hike prices for the fun of it. They do it because they've done market research and they know that consumers will buy it at the increased price point, which is why they do it because they can get away with it. The second it doesn't work, they won't do it because these are businesses and their ultimate goal is to make a profit. So once they make any decision that stops them making profits, they're going to stop it. So that's what I'm saying. So when they hike the prices, it's not like they're just doing it for the sake of like just making things more expensive. It's because it's going to make them more money. You saw someone spend 100K on shoes. How was it like one pair of shoes? Were they like made out of diamonds or something? They were just like diamond encrusted. I'm not paying hundreds on garments made of polyester. Yeah, I know, but most people would, which is why brands are selling like Burberry. I keep talking about Burberry, but it's just funny because they sold that duck beanie and it literally cost £3,000. That £3,000 is like, let me find out what that is in dollars in today's money. £3,000 in dollars. Okay, so that's 3,700 USD for a beanie that is lined with polyester, like 100% polyester lining. Like these brands just get away with anything. They just do what they like. Have you ever thought of making a personal Discord for the Patreon? So I've thought about it. The only thing is that my Patreon is so small. Like I don't have enough patrons to where I feel like there'll be enough of a discussion if I made a Discord with my Patreon, which is why my focus now is just like making consistent content for the Patreon. But in the future, when my Patreon gets bigger, I definitely would make a Discord, and it'll be like really fun to just like chat to people because I'm really bad with messages because I get messages all over the place. Like I get so many emails and so many DMs on like Twitter and like Instagram. It's really hard to keep up. So I just end up not answering any message because I just get like overwhelmed. So that will be a good way for me to get back into sort of like communicating with people and like chatting about fashion outside of people I see like face to face, basically. I wish opportunity didn't make all these brands go to Paris or Milan. Not that I think brands should stay in their own country, but it would be cool if things are more diverse. Yeah, I agree. Oh, so it's interesting that you mentioned this because I have a video coming out about this, um, where I'm going to talk about Avav and I'm going to talk about like Christian Cohen and like all the sort of just basically the video is going to be about it's going to come out some point this week, but it's going to be about kind of like fashion runway gimmicks and if they work or not, and if like they make sense for a brand to be doing or not. So yeah, that's like one of the videos I'm gonna work on. But yeah, so I don't wanna spoil it. Even Sunny had an interesting thing with their runway show where they had people hold up placards with like number ratings, like you would in like I don't know a dunk contest or like a show where you hold up, oh, it's a 10 type thing. That was like really interesting where you had everyone interacting with the show. It's just interesting. I think Sunny do some really interesting. So I think Sunny actually they do kind of like the fashion runway gimmick the best way, where it actually makes sense. Whereas other ones, they're just like it comes across like they're trying too hard. Yeah, brands are cutting corners to maximize profits. Of course. Of course. I'm very interested in military clothing because of its quality and practicality. Is it possible to see his collection somewhere? Maybe I'll get him on the channel, but I doubt he would want to go on the channel because the friend I'm talking about, he's very introverted and like reserved. Like he's not the kind of person that would want to be filmed, which is like fine. I completely respect that. Um, but maybe if I could film his collection and not him talking about it, maybe he would be okay with that. But that's something I'd have to figure out. Yeah, people will endlessly defend rich people for some reason. Yeah, I don't understand this. This is so true. It's something I haven't understood. Like every time, because I critique big corporations a lot, like almost all the time, and like brands just like taking the piss with their prices. And people defend these brands to the ground, and I don't get it because what I'm saying is factual. If I was like saying something that is kind of like up for debate, or if I was saying something that's based on perception, then it would be different. But it's just factual that brands, the quality of their stuff is going like lower. but they're charging more for these same things. It's just factual. I don't even know why it's even an argument. Like there should be no conversation around something that's so factual. I don't get it. And like people will literally die on a bridge defending these brands. It's like, why do you love these brands so much? Like they're not paying you to defend them, I promise you. Suppose the Burberry board salaries became 3 times as expensive. I love that. A good tailor, e.g., one on Savoy, will advise you on the fit cut that suits your body type. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Which is also one of the advantages of actually going to a tailor. Wait, hold on. So someone spent 100K on a pair of shoes and they didn't even have diamonds. Can you tell me what shoes they were? I'm so curious. What pair of shoe costs the 100K that isn't like diamond encrusted or isn't like some sort of shoe that makes you fly? I really want to know what shoes these are. What's my opinion on Vuja Day? So, Vuja Day is cool. I think that Vuja Day is just like another one of those brands that's a derivative of Helmut Lang. Um, However, I really love the way that Ken markets it. I think his marketing is like impeccable. It's next to none. I think a lot of designers can learn a lot from the way, like even like the rollouts and stuff. I really like what Ken does. And I think on an aesthetic level, I do like what Vuja Day, like what it looks like. I like the silhouettes. It's just that every time I look at Vuja Day, I can't help but just think that, yeah, this is literally old Helmut Lang copied. Um, but I'm not gonna hate the player, hate the game type thing. Um, so yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about Vuja Day, to be honest. And like I'm not friends with Ken or I don't know Ken personally. He doesn't know me either. So I'm always the guy that just says things how they are. Oh yeah, the duck hat did sell out. The duck hat, the Burberry polyester hat. Yeah, it'd be worth it if the items were made with organic and sustainable materials, but even the prices at Gabriella Hurst, I guess you meant Hurst, the Row and Bruno C make me blush. Yeah, I did see the Andy show. I talked about it earlier. There's a lot of discords of people with small communities which have discussion. So I think setting it up would be fine. Okay, that's interesting. If you want a Discord attached to it, I'm gonna write that down, and then I'll set one up during the week. But yeah, it would be cool to kind of like have long chats about fashion, or even just have longer discussions about some of the Patreon content. Because obviously on Patreon right now, I just finished the Kingdom of Dreams series. And so a lot of people are like DMing me about like kind of what they took away from the whole series and what they learned and stuff. So yeah, it's been really interesting. Runway gimmicks are fun if the clothes are good too. Yeah, I agree. At a certain point, your show can take away from the clothes and they should be the focus. Yeah, so okay, what I've noticed about a lot of fashion designers right now, which kind of gets on my nerves, for lack of a better term, is a lot of fashion designers now, they do the gimmick without the substance. So sometimes I feel like a lot of fashion designers, they read up about McQueen or they read about some like really famous designer like a Walter van Beirendonk who have had like these iconic runway shows and they want to replicate this like idea of an iconic moment. But when Walter van Beirendonk does it, when McQueen does it, when Margiela has a show with kids running around, there's an actual deeper reason as to why things are done that way. It's not, they're not doing it because they're trying to create a moment. They're doing it because it fits into the theme of the collection and kind of the ideas that they're trying to bring forth in that season. So what happens is you have designers who try to have the moment but without any of the context, and that's why all these like things they end up falling flat. and it just looks like designers are just trying to like fabricate a moment without any substance. So, and I know this because I know a lot of designers, and it's not their fault. I am very, very, very privileged in the fact that it's kind of like my job to just sit down and read about fashion and talk about fashion as a job. Most designers, because they have things to sew and they have brands to work for, they don't have time to read up on fashion the way I do. So I get it. Like, I'm not blaming them. It's not their fault. But I'm just saying that that's how it comes across. Like, from someone like me looking at a lot of these runways, it's like, okay, you're trying to replicate the moment, but there's no deeper understanding behind it. So like even like the Coperni spray-on dress, it looks that the way it was set up looks exactly the same as the McQueen show. But the only difference is that the spray-on dress had nothing, there was nothing interesting to talk about the spray-on dress other than the fact that it was a spray-on dress. And maybe the fact that that technology can be used further, because that like cellulose material that they used to make that dress, they could then extract it and then turn it back into a liquid that could then be made into another like spray on thing. That was kind of interesting, but there was no narrative around it. There's nothing else to talk about other than, oh yeah, Coperni did a spray on dress. So that's kind of where there's kind of a disconnect between understanding why designers did what they did, other than just like seeing what they've done from a very like surface level or like base level understanding of things. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And please save this live. Yeah, I'll leave the live up. I'll leave it up. Did someone say rich people don't have any style? I think it depends. It depends. I know some rich people that are super stylish, and then I know some rich people that look like billboards for luxury brands. Outside of Europe and the US, any upcoming or established brands you have your eye on? Africa slash South America. I mean, I talk about different brands all the time. Um, well, I talk about China, like I talk about Ziggy Chen and Uma Wang all the damn time. Um, in Africa, there's like so many brands. Um, there's like I always talk about Tokyo James, but Tokyo James shows in Milan. So then I talk about Tebe Magugu, but Tebe shows in Paris now. Lucanio and Dingy, South Africa, really cool brand. Sindiso Kumalo, South Africa, really cool brand. Clearly, there's a trend, a lot of cool South African brands right now. I talk about Victor Barragan, like Barragan. I talk about who else do I talk about? Yeah, I think when they come to my head, but I talk about so many different brands all the time. People want high prices because it means they are elite, because oh, I have Gucci, I can afford it, you can't. That's so sad though. I have never once thought, well, I'm not rich, so maybe that's why. But I've never once thought I want to buy this thing because other people can't get it, because the barrier to entry is that it's so expensive. I own things that are really expensive, but the reasoning for buying it is not because I'm going to buy this as a barrier, because this is so expensive and other people, you can't get this. So I'm on some like higher echelon of life. Like, for example, I talk about this every live, but like I'm really into cars. If I was a rich person, I definitely would not hold back on splurging on super expensive cars. Like I would own a Porsche 911 Turbo S for sure, which costs like a house. But I'm not buying it because it's an expensive car and oh, look at me, I have this like 200k car that I'm driving around. I'm buying it because I want to know what it feels like to drive a Porsche 911 on a track, and I'll take it to the track all the time. So I just think it's kind of sad that people buy things that way or shop that way, where it's just about, I'm buying this thing because there's a barrier to entry, which is price. And I like the fact that I'm one of the elites that can afford to buy this. I just see that as really weird. Like, I can't imagine living life being that superficial. That's just sad. I think brands use price as a psychological tactic to influence consumers. If it's priced less expensive than peers, it risks being looked down on. Oh, no. That's a fact. I've definitely read things to that effect. That's definitely 100% true. It is a psychological thing. Like, and that's why if cheaper brands raise their prices, the more expensive brands have to raise their prices as well. Otherwise, people start to see brands on the same level based on price, because people have like, they base brands in tiers based on the price of things. It's so weird. Like, okay, I'll give you a good example with cars. I don't want to like start an argument, but to me personally, I think Porsche make the best cars on the planet. And the weirdest thing is that when people talk about tiers of like exotic cars, people would tell you that it's better to drive a Lamborghini or Ferrari than a Porsche. And I genuinely feel like it's because it's more expensive. Like, people say that driving a Porsche is boring. And I genuinely think that's the psychological thing, because Lamborghinis and Ferraris cost more. So people have this thing in their head, well, they're more expensive, so they must be better. But no, like, a Porsche is more reliable. They're just as fast, if not faster, on a track. Like, you can use them. They have more daily applications, so you can drive a Porsche more regularly than you would drive a Lamborghini or Ferrari. But it's just like this psychological thing of like, it's more expensive, so it must be better. And I feel like people need to get that out of their minds, because that happens across the board. Like, fragrances, fashion, like clothing, people just assume that like with more cost comes a better product, but that's not always the case. You have to be able to decipher the difference. It's probably the aspirations they have that one day they'll be rich and have all these clothes. They're defending their delusions, dreams, and aspirations. Yeah, I guess so. Where's the best place to buy Helmut Lang in London? I could not answer that question because I don't buy Helmut Lang. I have no idea. I guess they would sell it in places like Arrow Archive, like old Helmut Lang and stuff like that. Or what did Mika say? Vijay is trash. He ripped off one jacket from Hyder 1-to-1. I didn't even know that. I do know that he's ripped off Helmut Lang 1-to-1. I know that for a fact. And because I know Ken, I know that Ken is into like archive fashion. And so Ken has like, so the Helmut Lang pieces that Vijay have copied, I actually know what season they're from, and I know the exact pieces. And I'm also quite aware that Ken has had those pieces in possession. So it would have been a thing where he probably like just copied them one for one. So yeah, but like I always say, hate the game, not the player. What are your thoughts on luxury fragrance pricing? The liquid probably costs them single digit in money to produce, but then you can argue with art, you aren't paying for the price of the paint. So, okay, with fragrances, I think it depends, because you also have to think when it comes to these companies, like economies of scale, right? So you have perfumer brands. Let me not say a brand that's as famous as MFK, because like a lot of rich people buy MFK, but let's say I'm trying to think of like a really niche perfume brand. My mind has gone blank, but let's just hypothetical. There's like a really, really niche. Okay, Aaron Terrence Hughes. I watch his YouTube channel. He's like a really, really niche perfumer. His fragrances, I've owned some of them. The quality is like exceptional. But his fragrances are way more expensive than any Dior, or like, especially the ones I buy. They're more expensive than the Labo. They're more expensive than Dior. They're more expensive than a lot of these brands. But I don't mind paying the high price because he's a small company. So I know, as someone that has a business, and I've worked for stuff, that economies of scale, the amount of money it would cost for him to buy the same raw materials that it would cost Dior, it would cost him way more, which means that his prices just have to be higher. So it makes sense why it costs more. So I don't mind paying more. I think what I have an issue with is when Dior tries to make some sort of fragrance that costs $1,000 when I know you're Dior. So you can buy these raw materials for a fraction of the price that anyone else would, because you buy it in so much bulk. So they're just clearly overpriced. So that's why I'm not going to buy, when I see luxury brands, I would buy it if it's like a up and coming designer and I know that, okay, these are expensive to buy. I think that's the same reasoning why my magazines cost £50 and people would buy it, but Vogue costs, I don't know, £10, and people wouldn't buy Vogue that would buy my magazine. It's the same understanding that because I'm a small business, the amount of money it costs for me to print things, economies of scale, cost way more per unit than it would cost Vogue. So I guess that's kind of like how you have to balance the whole luxury fragrance pricing thing. So to me, I think it depends. I think if it's like a big brand, I definitely judge the prices more than if it's some like independent brand or like some super niche perfumer trying to start their fragrance line. So yeah, it's becoming hard to participate in fashion outside of vintage because of how high the price point is on basic ready-to-wear garments. Yeah, I agree. I am getting to the point where if it's not like something really, really interesting in terms of design, if I could afford it, I would just get everything custom made. I don't see the point of buying a white shirt from a plain ass white shirt from a luxury brand that's going to cost €500 when I could get it custom made at a tailor for 100. I think Burberry made the prices so high to separate themselves as a quite luxury brand, in quotation, not for everyone, and in order to make it less affordable for the general public. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Oh, people are talking about gimmicks. I must be really behind on these comments. The gimmicks are tired because they seem to be done for the sake of it without any real depth. Yeah, I agree. Let me see if I can skip some of these comments because I think that I'm quite behind. Designers should do more research and get more experience before they start brands. People start brands before even understanding fashion history and developing their taste, leading to base level ish. I can't lie, that's really true. It's not true all the time, but it is true. I think that so a lot of designers now, they don't want to work for someone and they just want to like start their brands. And I kind of would really heavily advise against that because starting a fashion business is so complicated. You have to be good at marketing, you have to be good at business, you have to be good at tax, you have to be good at like managing money, payroll, like you have to sort out your shipping and logistics. You have to be organized because like let's say a buyer puts in an order, you don't want to have late orders because if you have late orders, sometimes buyers might decide, okay, we're not going to go with your brand anymore. Now you have like all this clothing that you haven't sold and you're just in a financial hole. There's so many aspects that go into having a successful brand. And like every time that people DM me and they're like, oh, I want to start a brand, like, where do I begin? The first thing I ask them is like, where do you live? Because if they live in a fashion city, especially if like they have parents that live there and they can like work and live at their parents' home or whatever, I'm like, please go and work for someone first, please. And like actually learn how the business works before starting your own business. Like, geez. Like, even I have a fashion magazine, and the first issue of my magazine, it did well. It sold out. Okay, that's cool. But there were aspects of it that were an absolute disaster. And part of that is probably because I hadn't worked at a magazine before. I've worked at different fashion brands. And if I was to start a fashion brand, I'd definitely know what I'm doing. But the magazine, the shipping was an absolute disaster. Like I had no clue about like getting logistics right. And that's the thing. So a lot of designers, not only do they have to worry about logistics, they have to worry about press and like all this other stuff. Like I wouldn't advise it. Just keeping it real on Peter though, the concrete evidence is in how these products translate into organic sales and it's not translating. I'm seeing all this hype, but it totally contradicts the consumer translatability. Most of his items are hitting 90% in outlet stores or just sitting. Yeah, I mean, in the last live stream, I talked about how financially they're not doing fantastically, which is kind of strange that they keep upping the prices because I don't think how that's going to make it any better. Um, Let's see what Ceci said. Honestly, that's not an excuse. A lot of great designers have taken the time to study the brand they are hired for. Karl Lagerfeld took his time with Chanel. Yeah, I agree. I think that, so how do I say this without undermining? Okay, let me just put it this way. So when I first went to Central St. Martin's, we had a lecturer and her name was Judith Watt. Now, Judith Watt is like basically what I would describe as a fashion encyclopedia. I have never met, and I probably will never meet someone that has as much fashion knowledge as Judith Watts. Like, this woman knew fashion history inside and outside and left and right and top and down. Like, geez, she is like the epitome of like a fashion like dictionary. Now, she was our lecturer, but her teaching style, a lot of people couldn't handle. So she's very harsh. She shouts at people. She's very brash. Now, me, as someone coming from, I grew up in Nigeria where literally like you get caned by teachers if you're naughty. Someone shouting at me is not an issue. But for a lot of the kids, because I have noticed that a lot of people in like this generation are like really, really sensitive to like everything. And so they didn't take well to her. And so a lot of complaints went, like a lot of people complained about her teaching style. And then I think she was like suspended. Now, I was personally annoyed by it because I'm like, I've come to CSM to learn. And if I'm not being taught by Judith Watt, my learning experience is like not going to be as good. And it wasn't, because I'm not going to be as challenged doing this degree as if like you literally have Judith Watt, where if I say a sentence wrong out of touch, that's just not true. She's going to be like, "Ayo, that's not true. That's not true." Because in 1925, this, that, this, she was like that. So I feel like my learning experience has gone down. And I've been observing in fashion, just a general observation that it seems in fashion, because a lot of like designers that we praise that went to CSM, that has made CSM the school that it is, they had lecturers who were so demanding, and they had a certain standard that they expected from the students, which is why you get people like John Galliano or Alexander McQueen, because they've been taught to think a certain way. They've been taught to do their research to a certain level. Whereas now I think I see designers taking way too many shortcuts. They don't really have a good understanding of history. They try to like replicate things that they see, but they don't really understand the greater context of like why designers did what they did. And it just seems like in general, a lot of fashion is like being watered down on many levels. And I think that goes down to like the way fashion is taught now, the fact that teachers have to be like really sensitive and walk on eggshells with the way that they teach certain courses. And I think the only people that will be at a disadvantage is the students, because the students then go into an industry that is that way, but they've been like kind of sheltered in school, and they go into the real world and then they can't handle it, and then they quit fashion, which happens a lot of the time. Because I think a lot of people have this mentality that like fashion is some like hairy fairy like easy industry, and then they work in fashion and realize, oh my god, it's actually like really tough, and then they like struggle. A lot of rich people are shallow because they never developed a connection to things, because they can always just get more. I guess so. I guess so. Can you save this video on this channel? Oh yeah, I will save it. It's quite useful. Yeah, don't worry, I'll save it. I'll save it. Yeah, I'm really behind. Let me just skip a few of these. Let me skip a few of these. Okay, too much light shed on big brands. We can't complain about their profits when we are the most important people. People like I need to focus on small brands making big impacts. I mean, I already do this. It's just that, so this is one of the issues with being like a content creator. You have to find a balance between getting views so that you can get attention onto the page, and then actually doing what is fulfilling. So what is fulfilling to me is talking about brands that I have. Like, I've made videos on designers like Priya Alawadia, Paria Farzaneh. I've made a few videos on Simone Rocha. But the problem is when I make these videos, anytime I make a video that I personally think is really interesting, it literally gets 1,000 views. Now, bear in mind, I have like 110,000 subscribers. So for a video to get 1,000 views means people genuinely don't care. And it seems to be the case that when I make a video about at least what I think is interesting, or when I'm going deeper into like an up and coming brand, people just don't watch it. But if I make a video that's like, I don't know, like deciphering Dior's collection, that would get like 50k views. I don't get it. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to like creative ways to highlight small brands, but get them the visibility that they deserve. Because I think there's no point me making a video about an up and coming brand if it's going to get 500 views, because that doesn't even serve well for the brand. So I do try to highlight up and coming brands, but I'm still working on how I can get them visibility while doing that at the same time. Let's see. Gendering in fragrance was a marketing concept introduced in the late 60s. Buy whatever you like. Yeah, the whole idea of like fragrances having a gender to me is absolutely hilarious. I wear women's fragrances all the time if I like the smell. It's a damn smell. I don't know how you gender smells. It's so weird. Okay, let me see if I can continue to catch up with these comments. Let's see what Ceci said. People genuinely think it's easy to start a clothing line. I usually ask if they're ready to be both the creative and the administrative head of their brand, especially if it's not capital intensive. Yeah, 100%. Your generation are a bunch of noodlebacks. Nobody likes direct translatable teaching. All the young generation do is make things up as they go along and distort history. Fashion school was brutal in the 90s and 2000s. So like there's a balance. Like I'm not saying that like students should be abused by their teachers. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that it seems to me, and I've observed this because when I was at CSM, I just was sitting down and observing in class. It seems to me that people are very sensitive. It's even the way that people talk about their work. Like, there's so much uncertainty with the way people describe their work. And then, like, when I'm in class and people used to do that, in my head, I'll be thinking, like, even if you didn't believe in your work, don't say that because it's like marketing. If you seem unsure about your work, the lecturers will see that you're unsure about your work, and it will affect how they view your work. Even if it's the best thing ever, it comes down to how you market it. So I don't know why like society now, like people are like really, really sensitive. Maybe that's like a conversation for another day, but I have noticed that like people are so sensitive these days, like insanely sensitive to the point where, and I'm not talking about things that are like genuinely problematic, like Phoebe Philo, or like things that are like I don't know, Alexander Wang. That's like seriously problematic. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things where it seems like people try to create issues where there are no issues. It's like manufacturing issues out of the sky. Do you ever get annoyed with the echo chamber in online high fashion communities, especially Twitter? I feel like once they label a house designer as bad, they're unwilling to look at the work objectively. Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Which is why I don't like tweet a lot. I look at Twitter just to see like what the general opinion is, but I do think that, and I've talked about this in many live streams and many videos. It tends to be the case that it's like groupthink, right? So once people have decided that Maria Grazia-Chiuri is a bad designer, she cannot be good. And like, okay, I genuinely don't like Maria Grazia-Chiuri's work, but I can give you loads of reasons why. And I've done that in past live streams where I've genuinely analyzed her work. On Twitter, it does seem to be a lot of like mindless bashing. And it does seem like once they don't like a brand, like Mo Alola is a good example, for example, I think Mo Alola has some really interesting ideas, but on like fashion Twitter, they've just decided that Mo Lola is a terrible designer and all her ideas are all copied and all she does is copy. And once that's the narrative on Twitter, you just can't really get out of it. It's so weird. Like people don't just look at things like collection to collection and stuff. It's weird. Son of a gun, I swear these new kids are so fucking soft. I'd expect to be pushed to do better if no one is pushing you. I'm also an ex-athlete as well, so I guess I receive harsh criticism differently. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's weird. It's strange. And I'm not trying to like diminish people's pain, but like genuinely, I do see some certain situations where I'm like, oh my God, like that really isn't an issue. I had a classmate in fashion school cry because they weren't getting an A because she wasn't getting an A because she was late on her own collection. They capitulated and gave her and they ended up giving her the grade. You see this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about with like CSM and stuff. Like you can't baby kids because a good example is like if you're submitting your work late and all you have to do is cry and then your lecturer gives you the A anyway, that is not good teaching because when you go into the real world, do you know what happens if you don't if a buyer puts in an order and you don't deliver your order on time? They can cancel the order and you lose tens to hundreds of thousands of pounds and your brand becomes bankrupt and now you don't have a brand. That is literally what happens when you're late in the real world. So you're not helping someone by giving them an A when they submit their work late. If I was a lecturer, if your work is late, you're failing immediately. And the only reason I'm doing that is you need to get used to how the real world works. You're not like you think you're helping them, but you're not. Because that's why all of these people struggle and then say fashion is so hard and stuff. But it's because when they were in school, they were babied and they weren't taught like what is reality. Like that's not reality. Like crying and everything becomes okay is not the real world. That's just not how things function in the industry. Content creators need to get fed, so they have to mention luxury houses. It's sad how many people don't care about true fashion. Yeah. That's why I'm trying to build my Patreon. My long-term goal is hopefully one day my magazine and my Patreon will be so big that on my YouTube channel I can genuinely just talk about any brand. And if it gets 200 views, it doesn't matter because like I can still pay the bills type of thing. That must be an amazing place to be. Put two brands on one video, one big and one small. Use the large brand to give the smaller brand a spotlight. That's a good idea. I'm gonna try that. I think these live streams would be a good place to highlight smaller brands. Yeah, really good ideas. These are good ideas. Definitely ideas for me to think about incorporating in the future. I think you should critique their work or invite them to speak directly to us. Interesting. I relate on a smaller scale. I'm on high fashion / art Twitter, and whenever I voice an opinion, it seems like people don't care. But if I tweet vintage Dior Bella Hadid, it goes viral. Yeah, the same thing is on YouTube. Like, I don't think people actually realize that YouTube is not like, at least I've been on YouTube for so long. I've made like over 400 videos on this platform. I know what works. Like, I think a lot of people think maybe when I get 1,000 views or something, I feel bad about it. I don't, because I know it's not going to do well. Like when I posted a video on like my book haul, I know no one cares. I knew no one was going to watch it. And the second I do a Q&A video where I mention Yohji Yamamoto and Balenciaga, I know that's going to do well. Like we know what does well and what doesn't. It's just sometimes I genuinely just want to post a video that I find interesting for the sake of posting a video I find interesting. But it is kind of like sad that you have to always, as a content creator, like give people the low-hanging fruit to kind of catch them before you can then talk about more interesting things. But it's still important to edutain people because most of your audience, I would wager, come to you to learn. but the algorithm prioritizes the big labels. Yeah, that's why I balance it. So that's why I make the video that will get the 1K views, and then I still balance it with the video that's made to get like more views and then bring in like a new audience type of thing. But yeah, it's like it's a really difficult thing to balance. It's even annoying as a content creator, knowing fully well, okay, I'm just gonna make this video to like bring up the engagement because my last few videos haven't been doing well. And if like too many videos don't do well, then the algorithm doesn't push your video and it's a ripple effect. Yeah, it's like a whole thing. Like even okay, I'll give you an example. Like from an algorithm standpoint, live streams are actually not good for a channel because what live streams do to your channel is they basically because it's all about percentage watch time. So the algorithm pushes your videos based on like what percentage of each video people watch. So if your percentage watch time is really high and people keep watching a high proportion of each video, the algorithm pushes your videos more. But when I make live streams that are like 5 hours long, no one is watching that in one sitting. So my percentage watch time might be most viewers are watching 3% of the 5 hour live stream. And then the ripple effect of that is that the algorithm thinks that people aren't that interested in your videos. But do I care? Not really. I'm still going to do the live streams every week. So that's the thing about the balance. Because what I love about the live streams is I can talk about any fashion topic in depth. And we kind of have these like Q&A sessions where we talk about such a wide range of fashion topics that you could never just cover in one YouTube video, which is why I would always love to do the live streams. I don't really care about having the perfect algorithm and getting my stats perfect. It's like, it's not that deep. It's not that serious. Mike said, I want to bring back beating. Are you open to attending an upcoming brand's showroom / runway show? Of course, always, and I do that all the time. I mean, I just released a vlog about when I went to Copenhagen, and I literally highlighted an up and coming brand in Copenhagen. I feel like there's always been a segment of art students that feel entitled to success because they have the right values. That doesn't necessarily translate into quality, though. Yeah, I think it's very difficult because if you think of when I went to CSM, when I went to CSM, I was 22 years old. So I was in the same class with 18-year-olds who haven't really worked in the industry. Bear in mind, I had worked in the industry since I was like, 16? So I've seen how the industry works. I understood how the industry works. I had a lot of industry contacts. So like I'm observing things in class and like there's a certain ego that some people in the class had. And in the back of my head, I'm just thinking like, genuinely, if you carry this ego into the workplace, it's not great. Like I remember I was working at a brand. I won't say what brand, but it was like one of the biggest brands in fashion. And I was working at this brand and there was an intern that graduated from CSM and she was arguing with the creative director. And the creative director literally said in front of everyone, which I thought was like really mean. And all of us were like, ooh, like the creative director, which is why I can't say what brand it was, because obviously like people will like put two and two together. But this creative director literally said to this person, she said, if you were such a good designer, you would have your own brand and your brand would be showing on the same schedule that this brand is showing. If you are that good of a designer coming out of CSM, a school where the best designers get funding from the BFC and they win stuff like the L'Oreal Prize and they get enough money and support to start their own brand. If you were that good, you would not be sitting here right now. So shut up. And this is literally what the creative director says. So shut up and actually learn from someone who has been through this industry for 20 years, working their way up. That is literally what what the creative director said. And even though it was like really mean, I can't lie, especially saying that in front of everyone. If I was the creative director, I wouldn't do that in front of everyone. I'll take them to the side and say that. But it was so true. There was nothing like not true about that statement. because you can't have a massive ego and feel like you know more than a creative director that's been at a brand for 20 plus years when you literally just graduated from school. Like, this is literally your first job out of school and you think you know more than the creative director. That to me is insanity. That's like insanity to me. I wouldn't be a great professor. I think I'd be really harsh. I wouldn't be. It's funny because I actually do lecture. So I lecture on the CSM Masters Fashion Journalism course, but I'm not lecturing like I'm a guest lecturer. So I just go in and I talk about like runway shows and analyze runway shows with students. I'm not there to like critique people's work. And if I was, I would be way too harsh and like people would hate me, and I don't want people to hate me. So is Phoebe showing? Yeah. So Phoebe announced that she's gonna have her show on the 30th of October. Last time I checked. So yeah. People who are switch made and selfish, they think their problems are the world's and they deserve to get personally treated to feel better. Like, I don't. Okay, let me have this conversation on the live just to like, because when I want to explain when I was at CSM why I'm talking about like observations that I had, like talking about observations, right? So when I was at CSM, also people would make snarky comments about my work. So people would say things like, um, let's say we would have to interview a designer, or we would have to interview let's say a journalist, and because I have good industry contacts because I work in the industry, I never had a hard time like contacting people or getting like people that would are considered like big names in fashion, like getting them to work on my projects. And I'd always hear these like snarky comments in the background, these like bitchy comments of like, easy for you to say, you've got so and so followers and like you do this and you do that. And like obviously I just don't want to be mean. I'm only mean when like it's appropriate, like if someone's like out of their way to be mean to me. But when it came to like school, I didn't want to be mean to a lot of the students that I went to school with, because one, I'm a lot older than them and it will just come across like bullying. So I would just have to take it and not say anything. But in my mind, what I was thinking, anytime people would make those kind of comments to me, what I was thinking was that, first of all, you don't know me. Like you literally weren't there when I lived in Essex and I was commuting, like making minimum wage and interning at a brand. And the reason why I was able to build my YouTube to the level it is because I was sleeping like what, 3-4 hours a day. And I was literally traveling 5 hours to and from work just because I wanted to work in fashion. And I lived so far away from where the jobs were. And on the journey back, the 5 hour journey to and from, I looked like a mad person editing videos and like reading Raf Simons books and like printing out ebooks and spreading them on the train to learn about fashion and going through all of this mess. And like, that's what I was doing when I was these people's ages. At my age, sorry, at their age, when I was their age, that's what I was doing. But I look at them and you spend all your time partying, and then you want to come to CSM and complain about where I am in life and start bitching about, oh, it's easy for you to say, you have an audience, it's easy for you to say. And I'm like, what are you talking about? When I was 19, I was interning at brands, like getting sleepless nights, working as much as I could to try and get industry experience. You're not doing that. So don't start complaining when you haven't put in the work. And I think that goes back to when we were talking about like entitlement and just people thinking that things are going to like fall on their lap, or like everything's just going to like work by some form of like magic and things are going to happen. I think if people actually knew the work I've actually done, because I don't talk about it. Obviously, I'm talking about it now, but like I would literally have to wake up at 4 a.m. because where I was interning, this brand, work started at 8:30 a.m. and it took me 4.5 hours to get there. Sorry, it took me 3.5 hours to get there. So I'd have to wake up at 4 a.m., get ready quickly, then leave my house at like 5 to get at this office at 8:30. And then when work finished at 5:30, I couldn't leave the office because even though it would take me 3.5 hours to get by, traveling that far during rush hour is a disaster. So I'd use that time to research like YouTube scripts and to film YouTube videos. So if you guys actually watch some of my old videos, if you look at the backdrop, some of the backdrops was literally me in the office of a lot of the brands that I interned at. Like you would actually notice if you go back and watch my old videos. And there were literally days where I would film a video, I'd edit that video, then it would now be like 8 p.m. and I have a 3.5 hour journey back home. And it's maybe like 11 p.m. and one of the like last connecting trains gets cancelled and I couldn't afford to like take a taxi back home. So I'm like checking my phone and I'm like, oh my God, it's like a 3-hour walk from this train station where the train has just terminated to get home. And I would literally get home at 2 a.m. and then I would have to wake up at 4 a.m. that same day to go to work again. That is literally how hard I was working to make it in the industry. So every time I always see like when I was at CSM, I just didn't say anything. But like when I saw people bitching about where I am in life, I always found it really funny because it's just like all of you party and all of you guys you just want to like have fun, which is fine. I party too, but like you guys don't actually work that hard. Like you might think you work hard, but you don't. And every single person I know, to be honest, that isn't a Nepo kid that's successful in fashion, they did the exact same. Like if they told you what they've done to be successful in fashion, it's the same story over and over again. Like every single person I know that is doing well in the industry. So it's kind of weird, which is why I said if I was a lecturer, I would be so mean because I genuinely want people to have like a proper understanding of what it takes to actually be successful in fashion is. Because I feel like people just genuinely think that things are just going to like happen by some form of magic, or people think that because I go to CSM, I'm entitled to a job in fashion and I'm entitled to be successful in fashion because I went to Central St. Martin's. Like that is not real life. That's not how the industry is going to work. It's just not how things are going to happen. I'm sorry. So yeah, I got that dog in. That's hilarious. But no, I think sometimes it is important for me to say these things because like sometimes like people, and it's funny that someone said I had the Nigerian mindset. So part of the reason why I was so driven is because a lot of people know that the first degree I did was chemical engineering. And growing up as a Nigerian, in our households, you're not successful unless like you literally, I don't know, you're not successful unless like you're an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or something. So when I left engineering, all my family members were calling me, like even my family members from Nigeria, they were calling me like, you're so ungrateful, you're such an ungrateful child, you have the opportunity, like you're privileged to be born in the UK and to have the privilege to like be born in the West. And they're kind of right in that aspect. And they were basically saying that like I was squandering opportunities given to me. And so if I'm leaving engineering to work in fashion, I have to make it work. Because if I don't make it work, the narrative in my family is going to be like, I left engineering to like to like go into fashion and like I'm just wasting my life away and I'm like not making the most of the privilege of being born in a Western country. And a lot of the kids that I went to school with, they don't have that drive because they just don't know any better. All their family live in the West. They don't have like anything to compare it to. So that's also like another aspect to it. But yeah, it's like the real world is harsh. I don't think people realize how rough it is in the real world. People do the same thing when they go to Harvard. Yeah, I can imagine. I think it's the same with all these like well-known institutions. I think a lot of people think that just because they go to a certain school, they're just going to magically get a job, or it just means that they're entitled to work at certain places when that's just not reality, like at all. I rock with you heavy. Trust me, your charisma and authenticity is 100% a Nigerian thing. You carried your passion and intelligence into the fashion industry. Yeah, I mean, in like funny ways, I didn't have a like I had no choice but to like do well in fashion, because if I didn't, then I would have been like, in Nigerian households, they do this thing where like there's always that one cousin that like didn't do well in life, and they use that person as the universal example of like, you see, Ayo left engineering and now he's working at McDonald's. Don't be like don't be like him. This is why you need to go to school, get a degree in a in a reputable industry and get a real job. I didn't want to be like I didn't like want to be the bad example that my family used. Like Ayo is the person that didn't that didn't become an engineer, and look at where he is now. He's homeless. Like, like I didn't want to be that example that my family members used. Oh my god! So yeah, that's also a part of where my drive came from. Honest opinion: if you saw an 18-year-old with a super creative mind who's very hands-on, would you advise them to go to uni? Yeah, I would. I would, because the thing about school, I definitely think that you learn more outside of school than you'll ever learn in school. But having a degree, we're still not at the point where you can get by without having a degree unless you're lucky. There are some lucky people who have a business and it flies off, but sensible advice, most people are going to work for a fashion brand. Most people are not going to have their own successful business. And to work at a fashion brand, having a degree from a fashion school helps. So for most people, the sensible advice would be go to school and get a degree, to be honest. But just know that you're probably going to learn more about sewing and tailoring and stuff when you intern at a fashion brand versus actually in school. If you lived with Nigerian parents, nothing verbally can phase you. Physically, too, yeah, facts, like complete facts. He was scared of being banished. That's so funny. Not gonna lie, that happens with my Asian family too. You don't want to be that example. Yeah, you don't want to be that person who's like, yeah, Ayo was the failure. Like, don't be like him. Look at him. He works in KFC and he's 40 years old. Bro, that's all African American households. My parents always mention my cousin who got a full scholarship at Harvard and they lost it because of parts. It's not even funny that they lost their scholarship, but it's just that because I know, like, I've had so many conversations with family members along those lines. Um, so yeah, uni is really expensive. I guess it depends on your circumstance as well. So like in the UK, we have a good system where you can get a student loan and you can kind of get by. Sometimes it's not the easiest to get by, but there's a chance to get by. In the US, I have no tips for you. I'm out of tips because in the US, I know people that were valedictorians in high school but couldn't afford to go to school, even in their own state. So the US, I have no answers. But if you're in Europe, then yeah, go to school. The US, I don't know what to say to you. I feel now more than ever the network that universities can offer you is invaluable for people who want to work in the arts. Yeah, I agree. I agree too. I agree too. Because I think people look at school as like, well, I can learn more outside of school than I can learn in school. And you're probably right, unless like, you're trying to study something like medicine or something like that. But the degree still holds a lot of weight in terms of trying to get a job. And then also the network is also a huge thing. Like I know I've been talking about like people at CSM that were like making all these snidey comments behind my back and stuff. But I made really, really good friends in CSM as well. So it wasn't like everyone I met was just like like tapped in the head, or like didn't have a good sense of what reality is like. And I did build a good network in CSM, and I've actually worked with a few people that I went to school with. So yeah, if you live in the US, get an OnlyFans or a sugar daddy. I've been a buyer, and I did a 1 year college course to get a admin job. My partner did a 3 month online course. Watching kids rack money up hurts. um, so you have 2 degrees, like you graduated and went to school again? No, so I left my chemical engineering degree halfway. So I left chemical engineering after second year. So that's why I said I didn't want to be like that example of the story of like this guy, he left his degree, he's a dropout, and guess what? He's a failure. This is why we tell you to go to school. um, but yeah, that's funny. I did finish the degree in the end though, like a different way, a like long-winded way. But initially I did leave the degree midway, but I got my qualification in the end. The US is so effed up for uni. So many of my family got into amazing schools but just couldn't afford it, and student loans are harsh, especially tuitions. Yeah, like the student, from my understanding, is that in the US, you guys have to pay back all the student loans. Whereas in the UK, first of all, the way our loans work is, how it works is you have to make 25K or above. And when they start taking the loan, like the payments for the loans, is anything you earn over 25K every year, they take 8% of it and put it towards your student loan payments. And you might make so much money that you pay it back, or after 25 years, the whole loan is like scrapped and you no longer owe the loan. Whereas like in America, from my understanding, the loan is never scrapped. So you have to pay it back at some point. Like, so till like your grave, if you don't pay it back, you die with the loan, is my understanding. And also it's harder to get the loan because like our student loan, the way it works, anyone can get it. If you're a UK citizen, you can apply for the loan and literally get it once you have confirmation to a school. Whereas like in the US, there's even like a lot of background checks to get certain loans. So yeah, the US it's tough. That's why I said I'm out of tips. Like if you're from the US, I don't even know what to tell you. US tip: just go to community college and learn pattern making. Hardly any pattern makers. Oh, that's good. That's a good tip. African parents think an entry level job brings in 50K plus. Always asking, so how much do you get a month? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, African parents, like, it's cool though, because I wouldn't have it any other way, because I feel like my parents they made me really ambitious and they pushed me to where I am today. Because where I grew up is not like the most fancy, but like I grew up in a place called Lewisham, and a lot of kids that I went to like primary school with, a lot of them like ended up in prison. A lot of them ended up in like gangs. Um, like they're just a lot of them just didn't do anything useful with their lives. And you can clearly see the people that were successful were the people who like the people that did something useful with their lives are the people that their parents were very strict. Like one of my really good friends from primary school, this guy called Timothy, he was Vietnamese. He's from his family were from Vietnam. They were like really strict. I remember in school, the smartest kids were the African kids, the Indian kids, and the like Vietnamese kids and the Chinese kids, because all our parents were just like, you need to go to school, you need to do well in school, you need to get your degree. They were like so, and then we then ended up going to like the best schools. which then means you have the best teachers, and then you have the best chance of getting into the right universities. And it's just like a ripple effect. Whereas, like, especially the white kids that did well were not the English kids, funny enough. They were like the Romanian kids and like the Lithuanian kids because their parents pushed them. But the English kids, unfortunately, those are the kids from my school that ended up like in prison and in gangs and stuff because their parents, like, they were so nonchalant about their future. They just didn't care. Like, we would have homework from school, and immediately I stepped foot into my house when I was younger. My parents are like, "Have you done your homework? Have you done your homework? Sit, you have to do your homework. You have to go back to school and have your homework like handed in." Whereas, like, a lot of my English friends, their parents didn't care about their homework. Their parents didn't care if they did their homework. So the kids didn't do the homework. They never did the homework. They never cared about school. And it's just like a ripple effect. So for as strict as my parents were, I'm actually very grateful that they were kind of strict because maybe I would have turned out really badly if they weren't as strict as they were and they didn't push me as much as they did. So there's like pros and cons to it, I guess. There's like some goods to it and some negatives to it. The US trick is community college for 2 years and transfer over to a fashion school like FIT or Parsons. Most other art schools are mid. So when you transfer, do you pay like less fees, or are you still paying those like crazy fees? Or is the good thing just the fact that you're not paying 4 years of the tuition and you're paying like a cheaper 2 years in community college and then the more expensive 2 years in like the college? I'm still trying to like understand the way the American school system works. I couldn't afford going to CSM, but the South African economy is shit. So such is life. Yeah, I mean, it's rough. That's why I say, like, outside of Europe, I have no answers because people's circumstances are actually really difficult. And it really is only European countries that facilitate like an economy to where like most people have an opportunity to go to school, even though obviously for some people it still is like really difficult even with the loan, but at least there is that option, whereas in most other countries outside of Europe there just isn't that option. Like Tebe Magugu, for example, is an example of someone, he wanted to go to CSM but he couldn't afford it either, but I'm very happy that he turned out really successful. And that people worldwide got to see his talent. And there's other South African designers, for example, like Lukanyum Dingy went to school in South Africa as well. And Lucanio is doing really well now. So yeah, keep the faith, work really hard. And I'm very sure that there's opportunities, especially in South Africa. I think of all the African countries, South Africa, if you want to work in fashion, is the place to be, 100%. I feel like the South African fashion industry is way more developed than most other countries in Africa, down to like the factories there, the big brands that are there. You guys have like the magazines, like there's GQ South Africa and stuff. We don't have that in like other countries. Like we don't have GQ Nigeria. So yeah, I think South Africa is like a good place to be fashion-wise. Oh, thank you so much for the when I read your name, thank you for the super chat, Dottiga. I read it in like the Dottiga Jamaican accent. But yeah, thank you so much for the donation. The only fashion jobs that are actually available are sewing and cutters. It's hard to actually get a design job unless you do your own brand or you work in marketing. I think it depends. I think so okay, so going back to like when I was talking about like how hard it was for me to like get my first steps in fashion and stuff. So a lot of designers I know that have design jobs, and this is why I say like, because I don't know where you're based, like Daniel Lord Vera, I don't know where you're based, but in European countries, especially places like France, Italy, Spain has a really good fashion industry, the UK, places like that. Most of the jobs, the kind of jobs that people want, like design jobs, they don't really advertise for them. They're the kind of jobs that you intern at a brand and then they're looking for designers to stay on and then they just hire the interns that they like. So it's never going to get to a point where you, as someone that's just graduated from school, is just going to walk into those design roles, because those roles are given to people that are working within the team, especially like the interns. So the reason why I got really good contacts in fashion is because I did a lot of internships and I managed to meet a lot of people. So I've worked under a lot of people in the industry. So if I wanted it's just that obviously now I'm working freelance, but genuinely, if I wanted to work for a magazine, I could. But it's not because I'm some like amazing person. When I went to CSM, I met many people that are better writers than me. Like, I can objectively say they're better writers than me. Like, I have no issue saying it. But I have certain contacts that means that I can get in the room and then get a job that, let's say, isn't even advertised. But that goes down to like fashion being a people's business. So once again, depending on where you are, I might not have the answers. But if you're in a European country, especially a country like Spain, France, Italy, the UK, there kind of is no excuse, especially even more so if your family is from, or you have like a place where you can stay and don't have to pay rent in those specific cities like Paris, Milan, London. You should be going to all the events. You should be meeting all the people. You should be getting all the contacts. And you should be trying to get an internship, because that's how you get your foot in the door. America is so confusing. And it's so funny because I want to like move to America potentially. I'm not 100% sure on it. But if I move to the US, I'll move to New York. But I'm just trying to understand the system. It's so confusing. Even the fact that like different states have different laws and different taxes. It's like, oh my God, this place is so confusing. Americans are still trying to figure out how the American school system works. My dad would help me on homework and I'll finish it crying because he worked with tears in it. In Fashion Week, I saw a show with the new Saudi new gen designers. They were great, hosted by Tina L. Yeah, so I think I was actually at that show. So last season, in during Paris Fashion Week, there was this like Saudi thing where it was like the Saudi Arabian designers, and they had this like showroom, this like long narrow place where it was just like a showroom with all of them showing their designs. And then at the end, they had like a whole showcase at the end. If you're talking about that show, I was literally there. I watched it. It was really good. I are switching allegiances to join Afro Caribbeans. I mean, a lot of my friends are Caribbeans. I grew up with a lot of Caribbeans in London. What do you think about the existence of fashion accelerators, companies that take ownership of a small operation with the explicit aim to sell it to a bigger conglomerate? Um, I don't know. So my issue with kind of like the mentality of having a fashion accelerator is when your goal is to sell it off to a bigger brand, it's just like bound to be watered down. It's bound to not have many good ideas, but it kind of works financially. This is a conversation I had with Metin Gursoy, who is head of PR of Hermes in Turkey, and like he has his own PR brand, like one of the biggest fashion PR brands in Turkey. And you guys know, like Turkey has one of the biggest fashion industries in the world because they produce a lot of the clothes in the world. And I had like a discussion with him. One of the full interviews I did with him is actually on the Patreon. If you guys are interested, if you want another reason to subscribe to the Patreon. But one of the conversations I had with him off camera was talking about how many people are businessmen in Turkey who have fashion accelerators, and they make like these like small brands that they then sell off to like other brands. But those brands they always look the same. They're always like kind of like fast fashion adjacent and stuff. So they don't really add anything to the fashion conversation other than just make those individuals a lot of money. So I don't really know what I think about those kind of companies. Well, what do you say? A lot of our magazines in South Africa actually fell in 2019, 2020. Marie Claire, Elle, and Cosmo all fell in a short space. GQ and Glamour are the only two real publications we have. Oh, that's interesting. I knew that GQ was really big in South Africa, but I didn't know that all those other magazines like fell in 2019 and 2020. Damn, that's a shame. Damn. The first 2 years are mostly general education classes like history, math, English. So it's better to go to a free college and a fashion college because you don't get really good classes until your bachelor's. Interesting. Interesting. On the recent Lola, do you think designers should have the full creative agency over their clothing, or should they also consider PR/business branding to avoid backlash? No, I think that because it takes away from the art. Because I've worked at brands where a designer has really interesting ideas, and then when those ideas are filtered through the PR team, they become such horrible ideas by the end of it. I think it's up to Moalola herself to be more cognizant of different cultures and to run things by, like, if I was a designer and I was going to use a Saudi flag, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I have one of my really good friends is actually from Saudi Arabia. I would have asked her about like the meaning of the flag and like what it means and stuff. So it wouldn't, if she would have told me, I probably wouldn't have put it on the runway. So I think that's more to do with like her, she should just have a better understanding of like different cultures, more so than PR having to take over her collection. I think where Moalola needs PR and where a lot of fashion designers need PR is when they go through controversy, what they should say and when they should say it. Because when Moalola said "Cry me a river," that was the worst thing she could say, because any apology after her saying "Cry me a river" is obviously not going to be seen as genuine when you've literally said "Cry me a river." And it was so unnecessary because she wasn't willing to actually take the criticism and see why people were annoyed at the way she used the Saudi flag. Instead, she was just like becoming really defensive, which a lot of like designers do. That's where she kind of like needed the PR to step in, but not in terms of like her design aesthetic or getting involved in the design process. I think that would just water down her ideas, to be honest, or like any designer. South Africa has a huge unemployment problem, the highest rate in the world, actually. So fashion graduates like myself have to be patient as well. Wait, South Africa has the highest unemployment rate in the world. That's insane. Or, well, one of. That's insane. I never would have known that. I know that South Africa has unemployment problems because I watched a documentary on it recently, but I didn't know it was that bad. I'm 20 and have just started a course in fashion photography. I'm genuinely scared that it's too late and I'm too old to start a creative career. At 20 years old, oh my God, you have so much time. It's definitely not too late. Trust me. It's definitely not too late. If you're 20 years old, follow your passion. Yeah, follow your passion. Yeah, just exactly what, yeah, it's literally the prime time in your life. Like, it's definitely not too late. Let me just catch up with all of these comments. The new Balenciaga is taking sweatsuits and New Balance and making them overpriced. Yeah, I lost interest in Balenciaga a long time ago. I think that Demna had really interesting ideas for like the first like 8 to 10 seasons, and then after that, he's stagnated. You can clearly see that Demna's ideas have not developed any further, which is fine, but it just means that I have no interest in it. So yeah. Mo Lola is from Nigeria. Most Nigerians have Muslims in their family, whether direct or distant. She should have known the meaning of it. Exactly. Like, I mean, I went to school with a lot of Muslims because when I went to school in Nigeria, I went to one school in Lagos and then I went to one school in Abuja. And when I went to school in Abuja, in fact, majority of the kids I went to school with were Muslims. So Mo Lola definitely has a lot of Muslim friends, definitely. Um, So yeah, like I don't know. I just don't think there's much of an excuse on that front. I got an interest in fashion 10 years ago, just enjoying the scene. I'm 35 now and I'm looking to start my own brand. I believe I can make a strong brand that sells online. Any advice? My advice would be I don't know what your experience working in fashion is, but kind of before you jump to start a brand, really try to figure out how the business works and how that would work for you and really like crunch the numbers before you start. Because most brands that I've seen go bust, it's not because the designers aren't talented and it's not because they don't have good ideas. It's always some sort of business thing. It's always bad management of the business side. So that would be my advice. Will I live long enough to see Anna Wintour leaving Vogue? I'm 19 and already tired of her. I think that I don't have a problem with Anna Wintour. I used to in the past, but I think with time I'm just like, don't hate the player, hate the game. I think my issue with the whole Anna Wintour thing is like I just don't like how people treat her like a god. I just like she's literally a human being. And there's nothing that Anna Wintour has done that I've been genuinely stimulated by. I've never once thought in my life, Anna Wintour has made a decision and I'm like, oh my God, that is like the most like revolutionary thing that Anna Wintour just did. Like she's just there. She's just there. She's a famous person. She's the most important woman in fashion, I guess. She's at every event. Everyone rolls out the red carpet everywhere she goes. But like, there's nothing about Anna Wintour that I find interesting. I don't really care. Um, okay, cool. She's on top of Vogue, but like everything about Vogue that is interesting, Anna Wintour has nothing to do with it. Like the writers that write for Vogue that I really like. Anna Wintour probably doesn't even know who they are because she's that far removed from like those levels of Vogue. And like the articles that I love to read in Vogue Runway, Anna Wintour didn't write them. Like Anna Wintour didn't take the photos. So like there's just nothing that interests me about Anna Wintour. I think she's just a woman that works in the fashion industry that makes a lot of money and is really important. But like I don't care. Like, so her leaving Vogue or not leaving Vogue, I don't think that's going to change anyone's life, to be honest. She's kind of just there. In defense of America, people will spend 250K for a degree and only make 50K and live in NYC. Yeah, it's America's, yeah, different. Perhaps her mission was to be disruptive. I don't think people would have been as pressed if she used Christian imagery. So, do you know what's funny? She did use Christian imagery, and no one said anything, which is the funny. It also says a lot about kind of like Islamic. What happens when you use Islamic text versus what happens when you use like Christian text or whatever. Um, but it's just interesting. I want to see if I can bring it up on the screen just so I can show you that she actually used Christian. She was like subverting. I think she had a picture of like Jesus or something printed on like a T or something. But yeah, no. All I know is that no one said anything about it. People only said things about the Saudi flag, which I just, as a journalist, looking at the collection and just looking at what people were talking about, I just found that interesting. Outside looking in. I'm 25 and out of school too late. Yeah, most luxury brands are stagnating right now. I agree. I agree. I love all this in the defense of the states. In the defense of the states, with different laws, it allows you to choose what state government and state laws you want to live under. I guess, yeah, that's kind of true. With one citizenship, you can live under like so many different laws. Kind of interesting to figure out all of the business and fashion. What's the BOF podcast? They have everything in fashion business. Yeah, that's a good recommendation. Your Anna Wintour video was the first video I watched. Shook the tables. Yeah. I just don't care. Like, Anna Wintour is probably one of the least interesting people in fashion, and I mean it when I say that. Like, every single person that's interesting in fashion, Anna Wintour does not come to mind. She just happens to be a nepo kid whose dad was like, her dad was like high up in the Guardian, so he accelerated her career, and she got into opportunities that most people would only dream of. But like, there's nothing about her that honestly interests me. Even like the decisions that people say, Anna Wintour made this like really interesting decision. Like Grace Coddington was like making her look good. Grace Coddington is the person of interest there, not Anna Wintour. So I don't know. I just don't know why people are like so obsessed with her. I don't get it. Like, I'm more obsessed with people like Grace Coddington and like Kathy Horan and Robin Gavan and like Rachel Tastian and like interesting people, like people with interesting things to say and like really educated about fashion, like people like Luke Leach and Alexander Fury and stuff, like not Anna Wintour. Like, what is interesting about Anna Wintour apart from her bob and her sunglasses, which are not that interesting? Too much idolatry in fashion. She has pushed and supported a lot of designers that are now established today. Okay, cool, but like she can only do that because of the power that she has. But like anyone in a position of power has the ability to push and promote designers that are established today. Like, it's common knowledge that Anna Wintour is the reason why John Galliano was at Dior. Common knowledge why Anna Wintour is the reason why John Galliano, after what happened, got a job at Margiela. Like, all of this stuff is common knowledge in the industry, but like, it's just because she has power and she's like Bernard Arnault's like secret whisperer. Like, she'll tell Bernard, like, have you seen this designer? Like, have a look at this designer. That's like, I guess that's like in terms of like the power that she has, but I just don't find that very interesting. Like, any powerful person in fashion can like push a designer to get a big position. Anna Wintour's the most famous nobody. Well, I wouldn't say she's a nobody, but I know what you're saying. Like, she doesn't really, she does a lot, but she also doesn't do a lot, type of thing. Vogue was great in the 90s to late thousands. Robin Givhan used to write for Vogue US. It was great. Yeah, exactly. Like I said earlier, all the things that interest me about Vogue, like, they have nothing to do with Anna Wintour. It's like really, really good writers that have worked for Vogue, really good stylists, photographers, fashion editors. Those are the people that interest me at Vogue, that I look at their work and I'm like, that's really influential. Like, people are going to reference this in years to come. So that's what I mean. Because like Vogue as an institution will always be interesting, and there'll always be really interesting creatives that are embedded in Vogue as an institution. But Anna Wintour, the woman, I could literally care less. What are your thoughts on? I guess you meant like Chioma because she's replacing Edward Enning. Do you think they moved her to stop her moving too far up the ladder in American Vogue? I don't know, because I heard a rumor, but don't take it as fact. Anytime something is a rumor and it's not fact, I always say like don't take it as a fact. But I heard a rumor or word around the fashion industry is that the reason why Edward Enning had to step down was because Anna Wintour felt like he was pushing a narrative that was too black. And so Chioma going there, I'm almost seeing it as, okay, we still need a black face so that we don't like, because Vogue, British Vogue especially, was super, super, super white before Edward. And I feel like they don't want to go back to that. So they're like, okay, let's have another black face, but someone that won't push the diversity narrative as much as Edward. That's what I think is going on there. Oh yeah, so yeah, Chioma. Christians don't defend their religion like they used to. A good example is the baby on the cross in a diaper. Yeah, I guess so. I think Vogue needs her more than the contrary. She is the one connected to the executives of fashion who buy the pages of the magazine. I guess that's really true. I think my perspective is the perspective of a journalist who's looking at things from a level of interest. I just don't think that there's anything that Anna Wintour could possibly do that would interest me. But she's definitely super important. I'm not saying that she's not, because that's why when someone said she's like a nobody, I'm like, that's not true. Because like she's literally the head of like damn near Condé Nast and Vogue, US Vogue all in one. Well, Condé Nast owns Vogue anyway, so but it's just the fact that there's just nothing she does that's like all she does is she's in cahoots with all the people that matter in fashion. And all those people that matter are the people with the money. And those people with money are the people that then are the reason why Vogue continues, because they like Anna Wintour. So they give Anna Wintour the advertising money and they keep that symbiotic relationship going. And I guess if Anna wasn't there, the system would kind of break down very quickly, because there's no central figure that represents Condé Nast the way Anna Wintour does, that these like business tycoons like a Bernard Arnault or Francois Pinault could like talk to on a level. I guess that's where Anna Wintour, and the thing about Anna Wintour is like, Anna Wintour is so super, super upper class that I guess Anna Wintour is the only kind of person that could get on with someone like a Bernard Arnault on a personal level, because they're all just upper class with each other. Whereas like once Anna Wintour goes, who takes their place? Who is someone right now that could take Anna Wintour's place, that could get on with Bernard Arnault and like Francois Pinault and like all these billionaires on a personal level? Like who? I can't think of someone. I'm in the Grace Coddington hive. Yeah, I love Grace Coddington. I love Grace. She's amazing. Fashion has a lot of personality cults. What I'm emerging saying about the BOF 500? Why weren't you on it? Who is doing what you're doing at your age and is an immigrant? Um, well, so the thing is that if the BOF 500 is a list, it's not going to change my life. Also, I don't know if there's like a conflict of interest, because I used to work at BOF. So I guess that's another thing. It's kind of like I worked at BOF and then now I'm on the like BOF 500. It's kind of weird, isn't it? But it's not that deep. It's just a list. And it just means that on BOF you have like your profile on BOF. It's not going to change my life, trust me. What did someone say? Luke Leach be too vague and exaggerated sometimes, and the writing ends up seeming like yapping sometimes. I don't agree, and I'm because once again, I don't like. I'm not someone that minces my mouth. So if I didn't think otherwise, I'm not just saying it because. Full disclosure: Luke Leach is the reason why I got to write for Vogue Runway, because he nominated me to write for Vogue Runway. But that aside, I genuinely like his writing and think he's a really good writer. But that's because I've read like a big variety of his writing. Like he writes for Vogue Business as well. And Vogue Runway, to be honest, is just a hard thing to write for. I learnt this when I wrote for Vogue Runway. Like when the runway show happens, you have a 2 to 3 hour deadline after the runway show to hand in your write up. So, and within that deadline, you have to interview the designer, you have to transcribe that interview within this 2 to 3 hours. So, like, it's a very, very hard thing to do. And someone like Luke Leach might do like 6, 7, 8 shows every 2 days with those crazy deadlines. So, if you want a good example of like when Luke Leach has time to really sit down and write like a really nice piece, you have to read the Vogue Business articles. So yeah, but no, Luke is like an amazing writer. You are interested in the editors, the stylists, but historically, old school editors and chiefs are decision makers, not makers. I'm not a big fan of her, but I understand her position. Yeah, I agree. I just mean like, because editors in chiefs are normally the ones that just make decisions, but they don't do anything of note in terms of like the creative side of things. But My issue is like, and once again, I don't have an issue with Anna Wintour. It's just like how people worship her, like she's the most creative, like mind, or like she's some. Like people make it seem like it's hard to do Anna Wintour's job when it isn't. Like Anna Wintour's job, you just have to be from an upper class family and get on with really rich people. That's kind of like Anna Wintour does those jobs where like I know many people that do those kind of jobs where you're like a CEO and you don't really your job is just to make sure that all the other rich people that fund your company are like you make sure that that money keeps coming. That's your job, and you get paid a lot for it because technically you are the one making the most money for the company in an indirect way, so you get compensated properly for that. So I get like the business side of it. A lot of CEOs are like that. That they don't really, they're not the creative minds, they're not really necessarily the smart people. What they have is like the right network, and that affords them those kind of jobs. But I just personally am not interested in anything Anna Wintour has to say or do because it's not going to be interesting or of note. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean. But I definitely understand like the importance of her position. Like I said earlier, once Anna Wintour leaves, like what's going to happen to Condé Nast? Like who is that person that's going to be liaising with Bernard Arnault personally? Like who? Robin Gavard, Vanessa Friedman, Kathy Owen. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Timberlanks. Timberlanks is like amazing. Alexander Fury on my Infinity Stones of Fashion Gen. Infinity Stones. I love that. I think Anna Wintour is at a point where she practically owns Vogue. If she leaves, it will be because she wants to. And it looks like she doesn't. Yeah, I don't think Anna Wintour is ever going to leave Vogue like by herself. Yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be like a Karl Lagerfeld situation. I've heard that Edward was approached by brands to work for them, but his ties as editor in chief prevent him from working as a consultant. He is going to make a lot more money now. That is also true. Because I know he's a consultant for Apple now, like a creative consultant. So yeah, he's definitely going to make way more money now. Those editors in chiefs titles, they don't make that much money anyway. They're just like glorified. Well, they're not glorified position. It's almost like I compare it to like being a prime minister of the UK. When you're a prime minister for the UK, let me see what the salary is for the. Let's see, salary for UK prime minister. I know it's not like what you would expect. Okay, so the UK prime minister salary is 154,000 pounds a year, which is a lot of money. But you would expect literally the prime minister, the person running the country, to make more money, but that's not where they're going to make the money. They're going to make the money after they're done being a prime minister, and then they get hired by companies to be a consultant, and they get paid millions for their expertise because they've literally spoken to all the world leaders around the world. So that is why people want to be presidents or editors in chiefs or those kind of titles where they're not paid as much as you would think, but they're going to make more money after the fact. The money is going to come after they're done working in that position. Like someone like Obama, for him to go and talk somewhere, they probably have to pay him millions just because he's the former president of the US. So he's going to make way more money now as a former president than he ever did as the actual president. So, like, it makes sense why people want to be in those positions. Asian fashion magazines produce covers on a whole nother level than American and most European Vogues. American Vogue photo shoots are so outdated. Yeah, I actually agree with that. I do agree with that. What do you make of Celine Adi cutting ties with Vogue? I think it shows that a brand can still grow and become powerful without Vogue backing. Well, now you can. Back then, so many years ago, when obviously there was no internet and actually you relied on these magazines, you could not really survive without these magazines. But now, yeah, it doesn't matter. You can just like build your own audience. The only reason why I can even say publicly that I don't care about anything Anna Wintour has to say is because I have my own audience. If I didn't, if we were in the fashion age where the internet didn't exist, I definitely wouldn't say that. I'm just telling you now, I wouldn't be so honest if you couldn't build your own audience. Love the consistent live streams. Thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in. These are really fun. So basically, Anna is why fashion as a whole is relatively boring. Part of the reason. Yep, Anna Wintour is basically the plug. She is. What's your opinion on Kathy Horan and Diane Panay walking for Balenciaga? Talk about journalist deontology. Yeah, I saw that. I posted on my Instagram story actually. Diane's look, Diane's look looked like it was from Diane's wardrobe. It's so weird, but I had need to look into like the reasoning for why Demna had those journalists on the runway, especially someone like Kathy Horan, because I know Kathy Horan has written very rough reviews for Demna in the past. And Kathy Horan, because normally it's actually interesting because normally, like Kathy Horan has been banned from so many runway shows because of her opinions, and it's so funny that Demna has gone the opposite way of most brands, where most brands for bad reviews literally just ban Kathy Horan, but Balenciaga have put Kathy Horan on the runway. It's so interesting. Well, I need to look into it. Oh, so many questions. I might have to skip a few. The reason why people love Vogue Paris under Karine Rockfield was because she styled the eds. Yeah, so this goes back to also different editors in chiefs. Like Corinne is like someone who I love and respect. So it's not like I don't have an issue with like editors in chief. I think Corinne, like she also started CR Fashion Book for people that don't know, like it's CR. But like she has a very strong taste and aesthetic and style. And that there was a period, especially like in the 2000s, where Vogue Paris and like Vogue Italia were it. They were it. Like all the most creative stuff, the best articles, the best editorials, all of it was going on there. So like that's why I say like Anna Wintour does not interest me because like you look at the magazine and Vogue US for a long time has looked so uninspired and it's been so uninteresting. Whereas you look at like Vogue Paris and like Vogue Italia. So that's the thing. My issue is not with like editors in chief or anything. It's to do with Anna Wintour as a person. I think Anna Wintour's talent is being upper class and being from a from a rich family and having a dad that was really powerful in press. I think what she does, if she was replaced with another rich upper class woman who had a bob and sunglasses, and we just like switched out Anna Wintour's timeline and put someone called Sarah Gaines or something, there'll be no difference. The current prime minister is worth 700 million anyway, so it looks like he's doing it because he loves it. No, he's not doing. Rishi Sunak is not doing it. He's not the prime minister because he loves it. It's power. It's about power. Once again, it's about money. It's about money. So Rishi Sunak, being a former prime minister, even though he's worth what he's worth, can make even more money because he was the former prime minister. It's about money. It's always about money with like prime ministers and stuff. Don't be deceived. Don't let politics make you think that these politicians actually care about people or they want to serve the country. Like none of these people want to serve the country. They're doing it for their own personal gain. Back on fashion, what do you think about the Tremaine Supreme breakup? Personally, I don't like him, but he got warned. Why don't you like Tremaine Emery? I don't have an issue with him personally. I just think that he does like to complain a bit too much to the point where it's just about he does like it sounds like he complains about too many things a bit too much. But I watched his interview that he did on YouTube. I'm not sure if you've seen it. and he was talking about how like Supreme only had like one other black person apart from him, and how they were like diminishing his ideas, and really talking about like the internal issues within Supreme, talking about like why he left, and he kind of had a point. To be fair, he was making some really good points. There were some points where I was like, but he, for the most part, he was making some good points. Let's chip in something for Io for the knowledge sharing. I won't say no. What do you think about Vanessa Friedman journalism? So I love Vanessa Friedman, but as a fellow journalist and an opinionated person, I think that there are certain. So Vanessa Friedman, for guys that don't know, she writes for the New York Times. I like everything she writes apart from when she talks about streetwear. Anytime I've seen her write about streetwear, I've never seen her write a good article about anything to do with street culture, streetwear. And I think, I don't know where she's from. I don't know where she grew up, but to really understand the inner workings of like why streetwear is what it is, where it comes from, how it works, what it does, you kind of have to know people or be embedded or be around people that are embedded around kind of like street culture to understand how it works. And when she writes, you just get the sense she doesn't have a clue about like street culture in general or like streetwear in general. So anytime she writes about things, topics that skew in that direction, it doesn't allow for a good read. But apart from that, Vanessa Friedman is an amazing journalist, like really, really good. Love reading her articles. I read her stuff every day. Like I have some tabs that open up on my laptop every time I reboot my laptop. There's like Vanessa Friedman on the New York Times. There's Robin Gavin at the Washington Post. There's Alexander Fury at another mag. There's Kathy Horan at the Cut. Um, I was following what Rachel Tastian was writing at Harper's Bazaar, but now she's gone to, and I was following her when she was at GQ. Now I think she's gone to the Washington Post. So I'm watching closely to see what she'll be doing at the Washington Post. I read a lot of like Luke Leach, Vogue Business. Yeah, there's a lot of journalists who like I read their stuff every day. Good job, Winter doesn't like Nigerian food because you'll be done. I think unfortunately that the American market, even more on a mainstream level, is not very open to strong creativity. Anything can be controversial really fast. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. The reason why Vogue was good in the 90s and 2000s was because if anything was controversial, they only received letters. Yeah. So what he wanted to put on the t-shirts was insane. That's why I said like sometimes he complains where I think it's not warranted, but then he also has some, and that's the thing, like two things can be true. Like Tremaine Emery can have some genuine points and concerns about working at Supreme, which I think were very valid. He had a lot of points that were very valid, but at the same time, he did kind of start to create issues where I thought there weren't really issues, to be honest. But like wanting to sort of like commodify black pain, I just wasn't a fan of that personally. But like, yeah, people have like the blackface pieces and stuff. But when Tremaine wants to bring something real, he gets fired. And that's my point. Like, that's why I say he has a valid point, because Supreme have done some like questionable things. Um, and it's just funny that it's when Tremaine wants to do what he's doing that it's so my issue with the whole Supreme thing is that if you're going to be a controversial brand, you have to be a controversial brand. You can't pick and choose when you want to be controversial and when you don't want to be controversial, because then it doesn't seem right. And then we have to start asking questions. Why are you changing your tune now? Old white people need to stop talking about street. I wouldn't go that far. But that's kind of low key. That's kind of what I meant with Vanessa Friedman. No lies. I just didn't want to say it that way. But it just comes across like okay. let me give you a good example. So I, for example, grew up in London and Nigeria. So and I where I grew up in London is not like some upper class, it's not like Chelsea or something. So I grew up around like day-to-day people. Some of my friends are middle class, some of my friends are working class, some of my friends are upper class. I understand how people live from different walks of life, different races. Most I have friends that are from all different races. So my lived experience, I just understand so many things culturally that when I went to my sixth form in when I went so sixth form is like where you go to school in the UK between the ages of 16 to 18. So I went to a boarding school within that time. And I went to a school that was like majority white in a way that I'd never seen before. But these are the kind of white people that they were asking me to touch my hair and stuff. They were treating me like some like zoo animal because, and it's weird because this school is so close to London, and I didn't even know there were white people in this world that were like that because I grew up in London where all my white friends grew up around people from all different cultures. So like you don't even think about stuff like those people weren't racist to me because they just grew up around people from different cultures. Those people just weren't racist. So I didn't really have I obviously I know racism exists. I'd seen police brutality before, but I'd personally never had a relation with a white person where a white person had been like racist to me growing up in London. And then I go slightly outside of London to a school in Kent that's like majority white. And these people are racist as hell. And like these people, the ones that aren't racist, obviously, and they try to like show you that they're down with the folks. They're like, Io, like I listen to Stormzy and I listen to Skepta. That's like their understanding of like street culture. It's like the most base level, like not knowing anything about the culture at all, but like wearing the clothes and they look silly type of thing. So when Vanessa Friedman writes about streetwear, street culture, it gives that sort of energy. That's why I had to like create that context. It gives the energy of someone that is like so far removed from like what they're writing about. It's almost comical reading it. It's almost like when you're reading it, you're just like, it's obvious you don't understand like why this makes sense or why it's polarizing or why this like is a big thing. Like, yeah. Someone said, I feel like it's unfair to say he complains too much. I don't think it's unfair though, because Tremaine Emery is like really influential in fashion. He has a brand that's becoming really big in denim tears. I'm a fan of a lot of what Tremaine Emery does. That being said, I just think that a lot of stuff that he complains about can be easily avoided. Like if he because Supreme has had like institutionally, like we have an idea of what Supreme would be like. So some of the issues that he was like angry about or not happy about that he wanted to change, kind of like me knowing the Supreme kids and like growing up around like a lot of the kids that were around Supreme, I know how problematic some of these people are. So like he could have just focused on denim tears. What Rachel Tashian's Prada review was spectacular and a fantastic take on what's going on in the industry. Did you read? I don't think I've read that. I don't think I've read that, but yeah, in general, her writing is just so good, so good, like so good. I think if Virgil was at Supreme, he would slickly involve blacks to change the narrative. The reason why Tremaine complains is because the fashion industry is super anti-black. I mean, I agree with him, but it's like I don't know. Like I just feel like there's like complaining about things and then there's like enacting change. So like for example, me as a journalist, I can complain from now till tomorrow about how anti-black fashion is, but people will literally get tired of it. Personally, I think a more effective way is to try and like kind of like build myself to like I'm in a position of power and then I can highlight the issues in the industry and actually enact change. I don't think like complaining about it all the time which is why like I don't talk about racism. I don't talk about racism a lot on my channel because I just don't like. Okay, I talk about racism. People that are watching this know racism exists, and if you think racism doesn't exist, I don't know what to say to you. Um, like I don't like how is that? I don't see what would come of that. I don't get it. If I was like talking about it all the time. When I moved to America from London, when I was a kid, the racial division was very strange. Yeah, I don't know what it was like, obviously, back then, but when I was growing up, it was like, it was fine, like completely fine. Hold on, is Peter Doe still in this room or he left? You see how everyone wants to get things off their chest with you. I'm always fascinated by Black Americans wanting validation from white space and fashion. I don't feel like it's the same for Black people in the UK or France. Yeah, I don't know. I just like I don't want to get into those because once again, I don't like to speak for Black Americans, and the reason why I don't like to speak for Black Americans or their plight is because I was born in the UK, but I can trace my lineage and my heritage. And I lived in Nigeria. I know where my village is. I lived in my village. I know my grandparents. I know my extended family. So a lot of people in the UK we weren't like completely uprooted from our culture. So I don't know the kind of trauma generationally that comes with like what Black people went through in the US. I can't relate to it. So I don't like to like diminish kind of what Black people go through in America because I can't understand it because I don't go through that. So, and it's not the same Black experience. Of course, racism exists everywhere, but there's a difference in, okay, I'll put it this way, for example, like being Nigerian, I meant mentally, I feel like the sky is the limit for me because when I lived in Nigeria, I saw Black lawyers and I saw Black billionaires and I saw Black people driving yachts and I saw Black people driving Lamborghinis and I saw Black successful writers and I saw Black authors that are millionaires and I saw everything and I saw Black people thriving in every way. So even though I'm in the UK, which is majority white, because of just how I grew up, I just don't think I'm limited by my race. I don't think that being Black limits me. I genuinely don't think that way. But I can only think that way because of my connection to my heritage and being able to see that. If you're a Black person and you're like a Black American person and you can't trace your lineage and your ancestors were like slaves, and that's also like there's trauma that comes with that. And like at every time that Black people in America tried to do something that like Black Wall Street, they tried to do something that helped them mobilize financially, it was always torn down or burnt or Black people were attacked. Like at some point there's just a certain trauma that comes with that. So I think that's also a reason why there's a difference in mentality, but I'm not one to like diminish it. And I don't really talk about all this like political stuff, but just to touch on that, that's why I get that we think kind of differently, but there's a reason for that. And I don't think that diminishes the way that Black Americans think. Or what did someone say? I had the same experience with white people when I moved from London up to Scotland. It was such a culture shock to have my hair played with and ask such weird questions. I live in NY where it's a culture bubble. If there are literally zero Black people where you are, first sight is like seeing an alien. In Japan, you'll get stared down because of a few Black people there. Interesting. Interesting. I mean, London is definitely, I think they actually said that London is about to be one of the most diverse cities in the world. So, yeah, London is always going to be way more integrated than most places, to be fair. Well, what does Son of a Gun say? Black experiences can vary from state to state. In the US, the same racism I dealt with growing up in Florida isn't the same experience as someone black in New York or California. Yeah, I can imagine because New York and California, they're a bit more diverse. So you wouldn't experience as much racism in New York or California as you would. And there's also like, there's other things that happen. Like, for example, I've had times when I've gone because I've gone to America so many times at this point. I've probably been to America like 10 times. And like I've gone to certain parts of America. Like I was in Arizona and the police like profiled me for something. And then they like were asking me questions and then they heard my accent. And because I sound English, all of a sudden they've gone from like being aggressive and hostile to, oh, you're a tourist, aren't you? Where are you from? And I was like, oh, London. They're like, interesting. How was your stay here? And then it turned from like me being profiled and them wanting to arrest me to like us having like a casual chat. And I feel like if I didn't sound English, maybe that would have ended a totally different way. So there's just things that people go through in the US that I don't have to like deal with in the UK. Like in the UK, I've not had any run-ins with the police. And people, to be fair, people do in the UK, but it's not to the same level as in the US. Um, in Bologna, Italy, racism is under the carpet. Like they laugh with you, but they really hate you as a black person. And when you dress well or stay authentic, they change their mind on you. That's weird. These places are all extremely far apart with different laws. States are more similar to countries. Yeah, that's why I think I have a hard time really understanding like the landscape of what it's like to grow up in the US because this idea of like different states almost being like different countries with different laws and taxes and stuff, it's interesting. It's interesting because traveling to different states is almost like traveling to a different country. Do I consider fashion political? Definitely. Definitely. There's definitely things that people wear. In fact, to know how political fashion is, you need to read Robin Gavin. You need to read her articles for the Washington Post. I'll just leave it there because she will always write things better than I will ever say it. So if you go on the Washington Post and read her articles, you'll see that fashion is very political. Um, from Peter Doe to talking about race issues. This is why I love your streams. You should do like a Twitter Spaces format, either there or here. Get some viewers and have a conversation with you. Maybe that's a cool idea. I just don't really use Twitter. That's why I've never even hosted a Twitter Spaces. I'd rather just like hang out on YouTube Live. That's my thing. Um, but yeah, it's funny how we can talk about different. How many fashion journalists talk about the black plight in UK versus the US? I don't know anyone that does that. um, the Tremaine. Oh, so we just talked about the Tremaine Emery Supreme situation. We just talked about it. We're just chatting about it. Thoughts on brands selling virtual clothing? In what way? I don't think I've seen what you're talking about. Yeah, Andre Leon Talley. Andre Leon Talley was so amazing, man. Like, geez. But in terms of like current day, reading about like the political side of fashion, Romy Gavin is like, because she writes for the Washington Post, like she's in the midst of like the political landscape of the US, and she writes about where fashion intersects between that political landscape and the clothing. So like Romy Gavin is like the perfect person to read if you want to learn about where politics and fashion intersect. I talked about Andy in on an Instagram live, so I kind of don't want to talk about it again because I kind of talked about it for like an hour. But yeah, I was going to say, what are your thoughts on Samuel Ross at the moment? One of our culture's finest, but he needs to adapt his vocabulary. If you ain't paying it, why would he need to adapt his vocabulary? I think the way that Samuel Ross talks is completely fine. I think it's completely fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with what Samuel says. I think what you're trying to say is maybe like he uses like really complicated words, I guess. Um, but that's just the way he talks. Like if he talks like that, that's the way he talks. Virgil Abloh had a way of like talking like that as well, but that's just the way he talks. Like everyone I know that knew Virgil Abloh, that's literally how he talks. Have you watched the interview with Bottega Veneta's first creative director? No, is it on YouTube? Brands are selling virtual pieces instead of actual clothing. Are you talking about like NFTs and stuff? Um, I thought that's kind of like slowed down and it's kind of like died down. I thought all of that has kind of like, yeah, I thought that sort of stuff has all died down. I don't know. Oh, Edward. Um, that was on Show Studio, no? With Hetty Marlich. That was on Show Studio, no? I didn't even realize that's what you're talking about. Sorry. Brain fart. I was having a discussion about someone. We were talking about how Casablanca succeeded where Off White failed, creating an aspirational luxury streetwear brand. Yeah, I agree. I think the problem with Off White is that Off White Off White relied too much on Virgil Abloh, the person, and once Virgil Abloh obviously left, there wasn't really that mystique or aspiration to the brand anymore. Whereas Casablanca is actually like, it's not about Sharaf. Like most people don't know who Sharaf is. It's actually about the brand itself. Um, so yeah. Let's see. I think Milan's shows are literally boring compared to Paris. I guess that's always going to be the case because the biggest brands are in Paris. And Paris is huge. Like Paris Fashion Week is a disaster. That's why I skipped this season because I went last season. I need a break. Like Paris Fashion Week, there's genuinely a show happening from 8 a.m. to about 10 p.m. every day. And then in between all those shows, there's other events you could be going to simultaneously. And everyone has their showrooms that you can visit simultaneously. And then there's parties through the night. So if you're not careful, you can like not sleep for a whole week if you go to like Paris Fashion Week. It's actually insane. What do you think Heider Ackerman should be appointed as a creative director for Chanel? Carl said he would be his only successor. I would love to see that. I'm not gonna lie. I would love to see that because Heider has kind of like been doing his own thing, and then he was at like Beluti for a short while, and then he was like he did the Jean Paul Gaultier thing, but I just like to see him like at a brand and kind of like develop an aesthetic just for a while. I think we've been missing Heider Ackerman in fashion in general. So I like to see that. Fashion Week is over in a few days and I'm still on Milan brands. I'm still on London brands. I haven't even finished really going through the London Fashion Week brands. I don't know how people like cover these things so quickly. Like how people can see all these things at once. Hyder ain't doing shit. He'll stay independent or good to a house. No human being knows. We do definitely need Kim Jones out of Fendi. I agree with that. I'm a big fan of Kim Jones at Dior, not so much at Fendi. I haven't really been the biggest fan of his collections at Fendi. Do you guys remember when shortly after Karl Lagerfeld passed and Silvia Venturini Fendi took charge of like the women's wear collections? because she was normally just focused on the accessories and like children's wear and like menswear, but she did a few women's wear collections, and they were so good. And then Kim Jones got announced as the creative director of Fendi, and then once Sylvia like stopped designing the collections, they just went bad again. Like the difference between like when Sylvia did those few collections and then when Kim, it's like night and day. Um, I heard that apparently Alessandra Michele might be going to Fendi. That would be interesting. Um, I just don't think. I think Kim Jones is an exceptional menswear designer, but I just don't think it translates into women's wear. I don't know. Come to think of it, Beluti is not showing anymore after Chris Van Ash left. Yeah, that's true. Have I seen a Beluti runway show recently? I haven't actually. Wait, Hyde rejected Margiela back then. He doesn't want to be at Chanel. Dude, done. I think though that Chanel is a way bigger gig than Margiela though. It's a way bigger gig, so maybe he might say yes. Aside, yay, what artist from another medium can create successful brand slash project? By that I mean doing real numbers. Pharrell. Apart from Pharrell, I can't think of any others. Like ASAP Rocky has tried it, it didn't work. I'd say Pharrell. Yeah, Sylvia did great. She was so good. She was so good. I just like since Kim Jones took over, it's not been the same. It's just not as good. They realized the customer doesn't care about fashion, just quality. That's why Beluti was done doing shows. Yeah, even when Beluti started doing the runway shows, like they tried to start building buzz. That's the whole Hyder Ackerman experiment. That's where it started. Um, the Beluti customer, they because every brand feels like they can capture a bigger market because they've seen what Bernard Arnault has done with his brands, and they've seen what like Kering have done, and every brand starts to think that okay, we should be doing runway shows and we should try to get social media moments, but it doesn't work for every brand. And I think, well, I hope that Beluti have finally understood that your customer base is like the classic man that wants to buy leather goods and leather shoes, and they're going to go for you for that, and they care about quality, and they could care less about the whole mystique of a runway show. Paris Fashion Week is basically a festival. Yeah, I agree. Oh, Tyler, that's a good Tyler. Yeah, because Golf Wang, the whole Golf. What's his brand's name again? Golf Le Fleur or Le Fleur, whatever. But that brand is huge. He even has stores, no? So yeah, Tyler is Tyler, Ye, and Pharrell really are the only three to do like a fashion brand that really does numbers. And then Rihanna is the equivalent of that in the beauty space. I think Chris Van Ash should have been appointed at Kenzo. I don't think Nigo's doing good there. His first show was already at the outlet. Yeah, I think it's more to do with like because I've liked Kenzo's shows. I've liked Nigo's collections. They just look like they look like a certain Japanese brand that I'm trying to think of. Like they remind me of like Neighborhood. Like the aesthetic of what he's designing at Kenzo reminds me of like a colorful version of Neighborhood, which I like it because I like Neighborhood. But it's kind of like if Chris Van Ash was there, I think there'll be a bit more buzz. And people follow Chris Van Ash everywhere he goes, like Louis Vuitton, like sorry, I said Louis Vuitton, Dior, and like he was at Beluti. But yeah, it's interesting. OVO. Yeah, I don't think OVO does numbers like that. I don't think so. Would Mary, Kate, and Ashley and Victoria Beckham count as artists? I guess so, but Victoria Beckham's brand has always been in financial difficulty, so I don't think she counts because you can't really say it's doing numbers because the brand is always struggling. But Mary Kate and Ashley, yes, I guess they're also a good example of like going from a different medium to being successful in like fashion because their brand is actually like a thing now. Like it's actually a big thing. Like it feels like yesterday when the road just like started. It's insane. I feel like I'm getting old. Victoria Beckham is a fashion flop. She is though. I can't lie. How you gonna do Sean John Diddy like that? He has a CFDA. But get you're talking about now. Yeah. Sean John was that big. It did do numbers. It did definitely do numbers. Nocta is horrible. I can't lie. I wouldn't be seen dead wearing Nocta. Victoria Beckham is profitable since last year. Is it? Because for the past like 7 years, every time I look at their reports, it doesn't look good. Every single time I've looked at it. Maybe more recently. I saw that she launched something recently. Did she launch like a fragrance? I know she launched something recently that apparently is doing well. I think it's a fragrance. Would you say the row is worth the money? Definitely not. Definitely not. When are we bringing Fat Farm, Averex, Fubu, academics back? You know something? Fubu, kind of. When I was younger, I used to wear Fubu actually. Um, Averex, I've seen a resurgence of Averex. You have rappers like Kibbo, who's always rapping about Averex and stuff, and like people are talking about. I've like Averex especially. I've seen a lot of people talking about Averex. I was actually watching a panel of these guys in the UK the other day, and they were talking about how like when they were growing up in London, like people would get robbed out of their Averex jacket. So like, because Averex back then was so expensive. Like when I think about it, like jackets for $400, like back then, like no one could afford that. So like people that used to wear Averex jackets, they just used to get robbed. And just talking about like how in demand like Averex was, and like everyone wanted to have an Averex jacket. I think I've seen, especially Averex, like it's probably going to come back. I've seen some of the row pieces from Ken Ijima. It looks great. Yeah, I mean it's not worth the price in terms of like quality price proposition, but it's cool. True Religion coming back. Yeah, they've been doing a few like cool activations and collabs. They've kind of like they've been doing okay. What do you think of Victoria's Secret's rebranding? I don't know. Their last show was really bad. I don't think they're rebranding really well. Yeah, Carl Kanai, those are like the OG brands. What are the cross colors? Like all those like OG brands. Would you say consumers are shifting their interest from mass consumerist brands like LV, Gucci, etc. to more independent brands who can give an authentic and exclusive experience? So I don't think that's happening, but I wish it did. So most people are still going to buy the Burberry and the Gucci and the Chanel because it's most of the fashion. It's all about signifying your wealth to other people. Unfortunately, um, but I hope that fashion goes more towards this in the future. Favorite essentials brand? Essentials. I don't know because I kind of don't buy essentials anymore. Like this T-shirt, for example, is from Arquette, but I've had this T-shirt for like I had this T-shirt when I was in university in Leeds. So I had this T-shirt since I was like 18 years old, and I'm 25. So like I don't really like essentials like a black T-shirt. I just wear the same ones that I've had for like years and years. Um, she launched Beauty, but before showing in Paris, she positioned her brand as contemporary. Interesting. Sales for 2022 was 558 million pounds, and she made profits for the first time. Oh wow! So she made profits for the first time. That's insane. I don't even know how Victoria Beckham's brand has survived so long, operating at a loss, unless like she's literally getting bankrolled by David Beckham. Like, yeah. So David took all the budget from from Victoria Beckham to get Messi. That's hilarious. Oh my god, that's funny. Right now, the young generation is thrifting. A lot of kids in my school talk about their thrift steals and stuff. So there is some hope. Yeah, I hope so. I do think that one big shift in fashion is I remember when I first got into fashion. This is like when I was like 16ish, 15, 16, to like maybe like 10 years ago. So that would have been like what 2013, 2012 period. Um, that during that time, I remember that wearing secondhand clothing was frowned upon. So like when I would talk about, oh, I got this like secondhand piece, that people would find it disgusting that I was wearing clothing that had been worn on someone else. Whereas I feel like now, slowly but surely, it's becoming a norm to actually like just thrift like stuff and wear stuff that other people have owned, and I love that because it's very good for sustainability and like increasing the life cycle of a garment. So I'm a big fan of that personally. Um, but that's kind of like where I've seen a big shift. So I hope that will lead more people just in general to just like trying new things, wanting to buy into different aesthetics rather than the same old big brands, main brands, everyone wearing the same thing, same logos. It's boring. You can get the Row look and quality at Joseph, Max Mara, even the brands from Matches Fashion is better than the Row. Yeah, that's why I said like it's all right, but it's not worth it, like from a money standpoint. But the aesthetic is cool. It's like a derivative of like Phoebe Philo Celine. It's like watered down Phoebe Philo Celine. Like I get it. It's like, and I get the kind of people that wear it. It's like a lifestyle. The Row is like more than a brand. It's like a lifestyle. You're gonna say, you man, these are art pieces. What do you think of British streetwear brands like Represent? I like Represent. I like what Represent did with denim, especially in the UK. And we don't really have too many of like those kind of like big brands that make it globally from the UK. So I do like what they're doing. And I'm not sure about now, but there was a point in time when, well, I can't say for now, but I do know that Represent was like known for having really good quality denim. Now, I don't know. You would have to tell me if you've bought anything from Represent recently. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. People used to get bullied for wearing the same thing 2 days in a row. And now people are like they have whole platforms talking about secondhand clothing. So I do love that. I love that direction. Even the idea of like people being bullied for wearing things twice in a row. Like even on YouTube, right? I get comments. I used to get comments. It's just that I don't care, obviously, but I used to get comments where like people would be like, you talk about all this fashion, but all you do is wear a black t-shirt. And I'm just like, bro, like right now, I'm literally in my living room. What do you want me to do? Wear a suit to do a live stream in my living room? Like, what do you want me to do? Wear my Rick Owens jacket and then wear my Yoji hat and try to be avant-garde when I'm supposed to be comfortable in my living room? Like, that's weird. I think it's more weird to dress up and wear a whole ass suit in your living room than it is just to wear like stuff that you would normally lounge in. But when I first started my channel, no one really comments that anymore. It's kind of no one says that anymore. But when I first started my channel, I used to get so many comments like, you talk about fashion, but you don't dress like someone that's in fashion. And I'll be like, what does someone that dresses in fashion wear? What do you have to look like to seem like you you look like a fashionable person? Who you're someone that, you know, should be, I don't know, you're someone that should be allowed to talk about fashion. How do you have to dress? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to wear like a Savile Row suit? They want you to die stylishly. I said they expect fashion people to sleep in their pieces. Yeah. I'm sure these people want me to wear my Yoji trousers to sleep. A best store I've walked in. I guess for different reasons. So best store conceptually is a store in Paris. Oh, what's it called again? I can't remember, but it's in my like Paris vlog. It's one of the last ones. It's that big store where they had like the Anzavilla Sarek stuff. That's in terms of like retailer. Mono brand, definitely the Anzavilla. No, I take that back. The Dries Van Noten flagship store, because the architecture is insane. So mono brand, the Dries Van Noten flagship store. Retailer, definitely that store in Paris. I'm literally forgetting the name. And then culturally, the allotment store in Leeds. Yeah, because the allotment store is like, why I love the allotment store is, especially when I was studying engineering and I went to school in Leeds and I was looking for like different people that were into fashion. Um, the allotment store is one of the few stores where you can actually go and interact with the clothes properly. So why I learned so much about like Andy and like Yoji and like Comme des Garçons and stuff was because every season I could go into the store and like he would encourage me to come and look at the clothes, even if he knew I couldn't afford to buy it. He would encourage me to come into the store every season and just like have a look at the clothes and like try them on and stuff. Um, which is why when I then got to the point where I could buy like pieces here and there, I wouldn't want to buy it from anyone else but him because I feel most comfortable in that store. Whereas, like in stores in London, like the avant-garde stores, they look at you so crazy when you even glance in the direction of the clothes. If you look at the people behind the scenes of fashion, I love seeing that they're just in a t-shirt and jeans, even for interviews. So it's not like I don't wear like crazy avant-garde things. It's just that I wear that when I'm going out. I don't wear that to sit at home, if that makes sense. When I'm at home, I'm dressed the way I'm dressed now. Like right now, I'm wearing basketball shorts and a black tee because that's what I would wear walking around the house. Like literally, I'm wearing like Nike shorts right now, like basketball shorts. Um, but if I was going like tomorrow, I'm going to like a fashion event, I'll pull out all the cards and wear all the like crazy stuff, but not to not to just sit in my living room. That doesn't make any sense. Like I'm literally in my living room. I feel like the concept of trends is slowly becoming dated because we have raced through all the trends from last century. Nowadays, people who wear what they like seem to be the coolest. Yeah, I agree. I think because trends are so fast. And I don't think it's just the internet because when I was younger, trends like do you guys remember like the swag era, the jerking era? Everyone was wearing skinny jeans, studded belts, Vlados. Then we went into like a different era. Before then, we had like the baggy era where people were wearing like Bapesters and stuff. I feel like those trends they had a long time. I think it's more the fast nature of the social media platforms we have, like TikTok and like all these things that have accelerated how quickly like trends just like come and go. At this point, it's almost like social media is just making it to where like people are just running out of trends to cycle at this point. I literally have Rick jeans and avant-garde-ish in my closet watching this in my PJ pants. Exactly. Like I will always push back on people that always like are like, oh my god, you like, and people say, and it's so funny because you can tell the kind of fashion people or like, and because I love to observe, I'm an observer, like I love to just like see people's behavior and be like and start to come up with reasons like why does that person do that, why do they behave that way, because I just like to know. um and I've noticed that when I make videos that kind of delve outside of my core audience, I get really weird comments. So if I make a video that is catered to my core audience, so I make a video about like the Under Millimista show, that's my core audience that are going to watch that. So I'm not really going to get any hate comments. People are just going to be commenting about what they think about the show, even if they don't agree with like what I said. It's a really positive thing. If I talk about a luxury brand or criticize a luxury brand, then I get all these hate comments of people like, you're talking about all these fashion brands and you're wearing a cheap black t-shirt. you're talking about all these brands and you're dressed cheaply. And like people are so obsessed with like the fact that I'm talking about expensive clothes, but I myself, I'm not wearing like Gucci logo jackets or whatever. And it just makes me laugh. It's actually hilarious. Like even the way I'm laughing now is how I laugh when I read those comments. But like it's just like observing it that people think that way. It's just interesting. Wait, I got to watch fashion vids on Studio, but see like live video gaming. Yeah, I don't know what Show Studio is doing with those like their camera things. Like, because I tried to watch their Helmut Lang panel, but it was so dark. I don't know if that was some creative thing, but I couldn't even see the people. Um, I see my first pattern and found a potential menu. I'm seeing that I need to make sure that the business is right. Oh, manufacturer. Okay, I'll start small. I'm excited. Good luck. Good luck with the brand. Post your CV before you do videos. Put some respect on the guy's name. Even like so the other day, because I'm not the type of person who I don't like obviously like in this live stream I was talking about like going to CSM because I was trying to make a point, but I'm not that kind of guy that in every like CSM is not my personality, so I'm not that guy that like is going to be like, yeah, I went to CSM and like because I it's actually cringe, and I cringe when other people do it, so I don't want to be that person. Um, but it's just funny because like sometimes I get comments like hate comments where people are like, "Who are you? What accolades do you have to be talking about these brands? You talk with so much authority and you don't even know what you're talking about." And because listing your accolades is the most cringe ass thing you can do. So all I do is I end up like pinning those comments and then they get roasted and then they always end up deleting their comments. And I'm like, surely if you want to dish out hate comments, you have to be able to take it. So when I give you the pin of shame, you have to be able, don't delete your comment. Like you have to you have to handle the wolves. It's like the dude who's overdressed for basketball in there with headbands, the most elite basketball sneakers, and bricking layups. And then you have the guy playing in some random Jordans and jeans, swishing threes. That's facts. That's facts. Yeah, the pin of shame. The pin of shame is a real thing. I do that a lot to people. Only because, like, I've never, so in reality, I know a lot of people that like disagree with my fashion takes, which is fine. Like fashion is subjective for the most part, unless we're talking about like business and numbers, then it's more objective. So I don't mind people disagreeing with me. Sometimes people disagree with me, and the way they disagree with me, they start like they like say it harshly, and I don't mind that either. The only time I mind is when people go out of their way to like personally attack me because I know in real life no one would do that because that has never happened to me in my whole life. I've never had someone personally attack me to my face in my life since I've been born. So I know the kind of people that comment those kind of things, they wouldn't say that to me if they saw me in person. So I'm like, okay, if you want to have the hate comments, we're going to put you on the pin of shame and you're going to have to fight against everyone else. And I kid you not, I've not had a pin of shame where they don't delete their comment after. It's so funny. It's like they want to give hate comments, and then when they get hate back, they can't handle it and they delete their comment. It's so funny. It's like people are actually funny just to observe like their behavior. It's so weird. The internet gives people confidence. This comment is still killing me because this happens all the time where people pull up to the court, headbands, arm sleeves. Arm sleeves is almost like an indicator that you can't play. Like most people I know that wear arm sleeves, that they can't play basketball. They're not good. Arm sleeves, headbands, elbow sleeves, knee sleeves, LeBron's elite socks, and then they're bricking layups. They're literally out here bricking layups, airballing shots from the free throw line. than ones that will type essays. See you walking in London. I want the picture, me with my kite hair. We've kind of touched on the Ante Millimista collection. So yeah, we touched on it. But yeah, anyway, we're at the 3 hour mark. My thing is like I don't want these to run longer than 3 hours. So people that watch it back, kind of like don't have such a hard time. So I'll answer one last question and then I'll be out. So let's answer this. Do you ever get the itch to release your own clothing brand, even if it's merch? Yes, I get this itch all the time. And then I talk myself out of it because I don't want to deal with like the business stress of like I wouldn't have a clothing brand, but I have ideas of like clothing that I feel like people would actually appreciate. But nah, I'll stick to being a journalist for now. But yeah, literally, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. This is always really fun. I'll be back again, same time, next week, Sunday. And we'll find a different fashion topic to talk about. So yeah, talk to you guys later.